A night in with MauLer and the drinker, getting trashed with the web screen thinkers. A cheap night cause I'm feeling kinda thrifty, got a 10-pack of beers and a bottle of whiskey. Hop up the cork, have a glass of wine, I'll stay on safe, I'll be fine. Trouble walking in a straight line, but pour me a Pinot Noir. It's open bar with our hosts, MauLer and the critical drinker.
Well, hello. I believe that's our cue. Let's get this started. Hello.
Hello. Welcome. Another Thursday meets us head on. It feels weird, you know? These are getting more common.
They are, yeah. And you know what? I think we started this only 2 minutes over the scheduled start time. So I think we're getting better at this stuff, by the way.
Not bad.
It used to be like 10 minutes late easily. So yeah, I'd say that's improving. One day we'll actually start on time. Or we'll scare the shit out of people and start early just because we can.
Do it for the 100th episode.
Indeed. Yeah, I will be dead long before we get to 100. But yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to Open Bar 35 now. Damn. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one, right? And it's definitely not down to me being totally disorganized, but we got quite a packed lineup of people tonight. Normally it's just I don't know, 4 of us or something, but I think we got 6 people in now tonight. Yeah, it's definitely not down to me not scheduling things properly and then panicking and inviting a whole bunch of other people, but hey, it happens, you know. So
It do.
we've got a bunch of guests, so I guess we should bring them in, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, we have got MetalCommander. Good to have you back, man.
Hey, I have whiskey this time as well.
Drinking?
I respect that.
That is not responsible, sir. Unbelievable.
What kind of whiskey do you like, man?
There's a Chivas Regal, I think it's called. Yeah.
Okay.
Quite nice. I don't know anything about whiskey. I just taste them and see if they're nice, and then I drink them.
That is a good enough strategy for me, man. It works. Yeah, and people get to see your glorious face as well. That's an epic beard you've got going on, so lovely stuff. We've also got a little Platoon. Hello again, my friend, and thank you for coming in for this.
Hello, no, thank you for having me back on.
You got your fantastic animated avatar as well, which we were all marveling at backstage.
Terrifying.
It's a little bit uncanny. I haven't got all
Robots
of
are
the
taking
settings.
over.
They are. I'm actually not here. It's a complete AI. This is not even me speaking.
Oh my
God.
god.
I'm trying to figure out what all the little button animations do. I know I can cheers you, and I can do like expressions, but I'll figure that out as we go. So I'll make some weird faces over the course of the entire evening, and hopefully some of them will actually match what I'm saying.
I'm waiting for one day for it to totally glitch out and you start like spazzing around or something.
Well, it's either that or I'm actually having a seizure in my chair, and it's just...
Well, yeah. Call an ambulance. We have also got George the Giant Slayer. Good to have you back, my friend. It was that was about a month or 2 ago, I think we had you on, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great time. I'm thrilled to be here, excited, and I have my drink ready.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear.
Absolutely.
And we got a special guest, which kind of came about because I put a little bit of an appeal out almost on Twitter, because at the time we were a man down with the panel, and so I was like, well, is there people out there who would like to join us? And then a man steps up, and yeah, we decided let's bring him in, and his name is Michael Barron. He is a writer. He's worked with DC. He's worked with Marvel. I think he's now on the independent comic circuit. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on the world of comics today. Hello, sir.
Hey, guys.
That's a mighty cup there. Hope that's not full of coffee.
No, bourbon.
Nice. I like it. I like your style. Yeah, like I say, I mean, like everyone else, thank you for agreeing to come in to do this. You know, I'd be interested to hear from you because, well, I was going to do this later in this segment, but I suppose it makes sense to cover this now. It was an interview that Kevin Feige did just recently talking about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I suppose just before we get into it, you know, I guess for the people watching this, could you like fill us in on, you know, your experiences of working with Marvel, working with DC, and you know, when you were working with them and how you got into that and what it was like?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Sure. Carl Potts asked me to write the Punisher because he liked the Badger. which is a character I created. And I wrote The Punisher for 5 years.
Wow.
And for the first 3 years, I approached it as a straight crime comic. There were no monsters, spaceships, other dimensions. There were a couple of guest shots by Dr. Doom and the Kingpin. But, the Kingpin could almost be a real human being. And after that, I got a new editor, and he was a gimmick guy. So we started to interact more with the rest of the Marvel universe. But as far as my treatment by Marvel and DC, I have no complaints. They treated me great. I can't barely remember a single instance of them changing anything I wrote. I was completely on my own for The Punisher, Flash, and all the other stuff I wrote. They must have liked it because they left it alone. But my editors in those days were guys like Denny O'Neil and Archie Goodwin and Mike Gold. And they understood what made a comic great. What makes a comic great is its entertainment value. Do you start reading that story and you can't put it down because it's so gripping? That's a good story, and that's what we're looking for. As far as Marvel and DC today, I have to confess I really don't keep up. Every now and then I pick up one of their books just to see what's going on, and invariably I'm disappointed and I feel that I've wasted my money. Because the books are not entertaining. And that's the most important factor in movies and comics. Is it entertaining? Because the most important facet of fiction is what happens next. And if the reader doesn't care, or the viewer doesn't care, he's going to stop reading the book and walk out of the theater. So you have to make him care.
Yeah.
How do you make him care? There's infinite number of ways. But the first 3 ways are, number one, you create a fascinating character. And I think that Marvel has done this many times, with Spider-Man, certainly, and Wolverine, to name a two. But perhaps the most famous, fascinating character in the world is Sherlock Holmes, who's more popular now than he ever was. And the second way you do it is with an intriguing situation. And in movies, that's Jurassic Park. The idea of cloning dinosaurs and creating a theme park for them is just irresistible to children of all ages. And that's why it's one of the most successful movie franchises of all time. And the third way to do it is with a seductive narrative voice. And that just means that your way with words and your way of showing things is just so entertaining that the reader or the viewer can't drag himself away.
Yeah. I mean, I think, looking at, I guess, what Marvel have done from a cinematic point of view and adapting those stories, it's something that we've commented on quite a lot on this live stream and on our own channels and so on. That feeling that they got off to a great start with those first few phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and perhaps they've been a victim of their own success and they've started to go off the rails a little bit with the more recent stuff. Where do you stand on that? How do you feel that that's all gone?
Well, I haven't kept up. I should. I see the movies. I can pick them up anytime. The last Marvel movies that I saw were probably Venom and Guardians of the Galaxy, both number ones. And I thought they were very entertaining. They weren't Shakespeare, but I got into them and I dug watching them. And to comment on these new movies, I'd have to watch them. The reports I hear are mixed.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. Yeah,
and I started to watch the last Batman movie with James Patterson, but it was so dark. I felt that I'd been locked in a cave or something. And I just never got through it.
Yeah, it's definitely got some of that to it. I mean, I generally liked it. I think the consensus seems to be that it was pretty good at capturing that detective aspect of Batman, that he actually has to spend time putting things together and trying to figure things out rather than just fighting, and destroying things. Perhaps that it goes on a little bit too long, and maybe that final act was a bit unnecessary, tacked on at the end. But I mean, it was an interesting change of pace, I suppose, from, like, say, the Ben Affleck version of Batman, where he's fighting interdimensional aliens and all kinds of crazy stuff. It just doesn't seem like that's what Batman is meant to be doing.
But I think that's one of the mistakes that they've actually made. It's like you just mentioned a second ago, Drinker. is you're saying, could they have been a product? Could they have been a product of their own success? Is everything happening that's turning against Marvel because of the fact that they achieved so much success in such short a time? But when I look at it, I sometimes think that, are they merely repeating exactly what they did when they went bankrupt as a comics company, repeating the same tropes, the same patterns in order to push an agenda? It's like, remove the agenda, just get back to story. Because like, why would you pull something into the cinematic universe? Let's take, for example, you just brought like Batman, Snyder's version of Batman, right? So you have BVS. Dark Knight Returns, I still think, is one of the seminal comics. I love it, except you're required to have a relationship between the Dark Knight and Superman. You need that 25 to 30-year relationship in order to have that emotional pull. But just throwing him in and going, oh, well, that's an alien I got to kill because he could kill the planet. It loses some of its magic, some of its touch. And we see that now in the Marvel. I mean, come on, they're talking, you had Kevin Feige talking about the fact that we're going to have Captain America, New World Order, when the comic version is like, no one wanted that.
Yeah. There seems to be this real, trend within the comic space, I guess, of, just recycling the same heroes, just giving the mantle to a different character over and over again. And it's like, how many times can you keep doing that before people just lose track and stop caring? Like, I know that...
I think we know now.
Yeah, we're getting there. And I think maybe there's more tolerance for that within comic books because, it kind of goes with the territory and people are used to it. But within the cinema space, general audiences maybe aren't so used to that idea of just things changing hands on a regular basis. And you just have to move along with a new character. And yeah, when they try to pull it within the MCU, it just comes off as weirdly manipulative and kind of cheap. It's like, just like this new character the same way you like the old one because they're wearing the same outfit or something. Like it doesn't work like that. You don't have that same attachment.
We don't want to put in the work again.
Yeah.
Because the older character said, "I like this one." It's like, yeah, but I don't.
Oh yeah.
It's like, what are we supposed to do with that?
The thing
My
about
favorite Marvel is The Winter Soldier because that movie had a lot of heft to it. It was about serious issues.
Yes.
And it took itself seriously.
Yeah.
I love
the
that.
joke aspect of it as well, which doesn't
Guy
work.
wants to know if I've seen the Punisher Netflix series. I did start watching the first series, and I watched 5 or 6 episodes, and I thought John Bernthal was by far the best Punisher ever. The story was a little scattershot and lacked focus, but I like Bernthal in it. But the best Punisher movie of all time is The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington. It's not a difficult concept to get right, and I don't know why Marvel keeps blowing it. But if you want to see it done right, watch The Equalizer.
Right, I think it's fun.
What do you think of the Tom Jane one?
Yeah, I like Tom Jane. I thought he could have been a good Punisher. I especially like the short that he filmed himself about the laundry. But it was a mistake to move it to Miami, and John Travolta was terrible as the villain. He was just walking through that part. It didn't have any heft, It didn't have. It wasn't a serious movie with a lot of weight, like The Equalizer is. I mean, you got to believe in these characters and think there's something at stake for you to get into the movie.
Oh, I agree.
Did you watch the Netflix Daredevil series?
No, I haven't watched that yet. I've been meaning to. I'm just I'm overwhelmed with media.
Yeah, we all are. I think we cite that as, that was a really good iteration of the character. It was done really well. And the idea that they're now going to re-release him on Disney Plus, and you've got it's the same actor, but it's different writers, and it's going to have a completely different tone and feel. And it just feels like they're going to lose the grittiness and the brutality that made that show so awesome and so compelling, and it's just going to be Disney-fied,
right?
Like everything else does.
Well, right. I mean, you're exactly right again. They're going to rip out all that kind of like Miller's line of Daredevil, and instead you're going to have what? You're going to have She-Hulk with actually peg Daredevil. You see, they're bringing in the writers from CW's Naomi. They're bringing in the executive producer. I'm like, from Naomi, you mean the show actually got canceled in its first season? But again, we're talking about the CW. But I have a question. I'm curious, Michael. It's great to meet you.
Thank you.
You said you had a free hand when you were writing for Marvel. I mean, I'm sure you have friends at Marvel today. Do they still feel, or in your estimation, that they have a free hand? No friends?
I know no one at Marvel
No Marvel today?
except maybe some old world artists that are still working there. I met CB Cebulski at a con several years ago. I said, CB, I'm Mike Barron. I used to write Punisher. I'd like to pitch you a few Punisher ideas. And he said, sure, Mike, sure. I'd love to hear them. Here's my card.
What did you think of the new?
Sent 5 ideas with no response. I gave up.
Well, what did you think of the new Punisher logo? That didn't seem to go over well with a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah, because I love yeah, of course, I love the original Punisher. It's like they're changing it. I mean, you heard Bernthal, he's spoken over the last 2 years, and he said that he is excited to go back because he has 3 things in his life that he really loves. He goes, I love my God, I love my wife and my kids, and Punisher. And he goes, I'll never betray Punisher. So he goes, if Disney wants me back to do it, he goes, they have to do it exactly the way we did it with Netflix. You cannot betray the character. But it was kind of similar, but with less intensity, of what Charlie Cox had said about Daredevil. And we see he flipped. It's like, oh, I'm happy to have She-Hulk come on the show. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, if he takes that kind of stand like Bernthal, the next headline you're going to see about this is like, Punisher has now been recast with a new actor who's going to bring a fresh voice to the character. You know, they'll just ditch him. Like if he doesn't play ball, I get that impression.
By the way, I was unaware they had changed or updated the icon for Punisher. Why the hell did they do that?
Yeah.
It's like
I'll tell you, because they're embarrassed by the character and they're trying to ease him out. They're embarrassed that he stands for law and order. They don't like the fact that police and military use the symbol. And the reason is they've gone woke. I just want to mention here that I have a book out called Private American, and it's essentially the Punisher on the southern border. It's funding now on Indiegogo.
The link to that is in the description, by the way, for anyone who's interested. You can go to that and support it and pre-order your copy.
Thank you, Drinker.
Because the original skull looks fucking badass. It's not just a skull; it's the way that they've designed it. It's so awesome. This new one, if that's,
I want the military and the police to use that symbol because they understand that it stands for protection of the innocent and and upholding the rule of law.
I agree. Except the fact is that when the Punisher series came out on Netflix, the very first thing they attacked was the logo and all the police and all the soldiers who use it. They're like, "Aren't you sending a message of killing people?" They're like, "No, you idiots! You're sending a message that he's going after bad guys." But they're like, they can't separate their fixation on their ideology, and they're saying, "Look, he's using guns." Well, he's the Punisher. Well, because now today, Az and I were talking about this earlier. It's like the Punisher has superpowers. And I'm like, wait a minute, that completely changes his character.
Yeah, I thought his superpower is he's just really angry and he's good at killing people, you know?
Yeah. He and
it's like,
Kratos would have gone along.
Well, this makes me think as well, like if they were to try and do a Punisher now, obviously guns are his mainstay. It's how he operates. They're not going to be keen to show a lot of that on screen now. And it's like, well, how are you going to do this weird, neutered, watered-down version of the Punisher who doesn't have many guns to use and all that stuff? It's like you're taking all the essential elements of the character away from him. So what's the point in even doing it? But at that point, it just doesn't seem like it.
It's also the vigilante. The vigilante looms large in the American history and imagination. Americans have always loved vigilantes because during the taming of the West, the Wild West, before civilization came to the West, there was very little law out there, and people had to take the law into their own hands. A lot of bad people did, a lot of good people did, and myths and legends arose around those people like Wild Bill Hickok, Kit Carson, Wyatt Earp. These are legendary American figures, and they were vigilantes at some point. But they had to be. If you wanted to preserve peace or advance civilization, you had to take the law into your own hands because there was no police force to call. There was no sheriff within 50 miles of where you were. And if he was 50 miles away, it would take 2 days riding to get there.
It's like, I'm being attacked. Come help me. It's like, well, I'll be there by the next week.
I mean, you had that. That was like the...
some of the, it lingers in some of the American states. I mean, you still get more sympathy with the vigilante spirit if you're in the sort of the Beltway country, the flyover states, and in the deep south. Once upon a time, you probably have had quite a lot of actors, writers, and directors drawn from those states with a much sort of more latent cultural sympathy for that trope. The problem now is that you don't tend to get actors or writers drawn from those areas anymore. They are all coming from the same schools in California, in New York. They've grown up in San Francisco. San Francisco is their culture. And that's now why you get this massive turn away from any kind of ideological diversity, and also away from the old tropes that used to define action films. This is why there isn't another John Wayne, there isn't another Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you have people like James Cameron coming out and saying, well, I'm really tired of fetishizing gun violence. It's like, you're James Cameron. You
You invented the pulse rifle. Like, you can't back away from that.
What's crazy as well is like when I watched T2 with Rags, who's obsessed with guns, the one thing he was super impressed by, as many things, was their attention to the guns in that film. That they kept an eye on what ammo was available, what the guns actually do, like the impacts of each of them. So like the gun accuracy is really cool in T2. It's just like, you don't have to, it's not about fetishizing guns, just guns are fucking tools, man. And they help save your life.
Right, exactly.
And you have to be accurate or you're going to hear about it. Trust me.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. Do you think you could pull off having that dark stranger vigilante motif, whether you're talking about Clint Eastwood or Charles Bronson, doing the whole death wish thing? I mean, what they're doing to the Punisher. You'd have Bronson today and you'd have a deconstructed villain who's just misunderstood. He's like going to kill him. He's like, wait a minute, I'm in therapy. You don't understand me.
Well, I think, vigilantes, they just lend themselves really well to the idea of the anti-hero who's morally grey, and you can explore all kinds of ideas about whether they're right or wrong and whether they regret what they do, all that stuff. It's really interesting things from a character point of view, but you have to commit to the idea that this is what they are. They are a vigilante, they're going to be killing people, they're probably going to use guns, and it's just the essential nature of the story. And you don't have to take this side of like, well, it's supporting gun violence, or it's doing this, or it's doing that. It's like MauLer said, all of these things are tools that allow you to explore these different aspects of the character. And as long as it's done like that, I can't see why people should object to it.
Right. That's because they're having today. They want their reality to be informed by art instead of it being vice versa. They want to create this safe space bubble, not only in the films but around the world. You see what I'm saying? It's like, hey, we can't have look at the Marvel lineup. So they're talking about New Avengers. Now I was looking at it, and they're saying that slate for Phase 5, and that they're bringing in Diamondback, but they're not bringing in the Diamondback from the Netflix series, which already has an established canon. They're bringing in the female who's a Diamondback. So I'm like, so the New Avengers is basically like what Gary always says, the MCU. It's literally like, where do you actually have a lead character that people can look up to as a role model, as something that's grounded, who's also a hero?
I was going to ask as well, Michael, like George touched upon there. It was a phrase that Gary from Nerdrotic had coined about the MCU, how the idea that they've essentially just taken all the male characters and they've replaced them with female counterparts in the most recent phase of Marvel, and they don't seem to be slowing down with that anytime soon. Is that something that you noticed within the actual comics industry as well? And yeah, how did that go down amongst the writers, if so?
Well, as I said, I'm not in the regular industry these days, so all my stuff is like observation, like you guys, from what I read on chat and from what other people say on social media. But my impression is that the editors and the writers that they hire are not there to promote storytelling. They're there because they got a chip on their shoulder, they've got an attitude, or they got something they want to shove down the public's throat, and they don't know how to do it because the writing often comes across as forced and unnatural. And also, I flip through these books and I'll see a page with 250 words spread out over 9 captions and word balloons, so that there's more text on the page than art. And that's just a big turnoff. I can't get past such a page because I know that whoever's writing that book has no idea what they're doing. Comics are a visual medium. And the second most important rule in comics, the first is entertain. The second is show, don't tell. And that means that any information you can impart visually to advance the story, you should. And save your words for characterization. Sometimes the words do advance the story, but it has to rise naturally out of the narrative. Because if it doesn't, it just sounds like clinking or crashing glass. The reader can tell.
Well, just a lot of the time, it just sounds like the writer just projecting their own beliefs onto
Yeah,
the
and
page.
that's
it's like,
not what comics are for. They're there to entertain. I parcel my words out like gold coins. I hate to spend them, but I will if I must. And I don't believe in wordless comics because they take 30 seconds to read and then you forget them. The words are damned important in comics, maybe even more so in comics than they are in a novel because there's so few of them and they have to count. And if they're clunky, the reader's going to close the book and turn away. For instance, if you read, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, or we have to talk, or move it, people, you know you're in the hands of an amateur.
yeah.
And you
Or
see
if there's
that
al-
with this Black Panther, which they've turned over to. I don't know if he's still doing it, but Ta-Nehisi Coates was brought in to write Black Panther issues of the comics, and this guy's background is as a journalist, and I use that term loosely, and an
Are you
ideologue.
talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I bought
And you know,
his
his
Captain
background isn't
America's-
comics writing, so he's not a particularly good storyteller, and he's quite clearly only been brought in because the whole point of bringing him in is that you do get to push the message that he brings in with him. But how much of this do you think is, because there's a chicken and egg problem. Comics don't make a huge amount of money anymore, but they're sort of a legacy product attached to larger companies, which keep them as a legacy product. Because they don't bring in very much money, they're almost, it seems to me, a safe ground to be pushing these kinds of messages and agendas, but that also guarantees they won't be making any money in the future. So I'm not sure which of these comes first. Is it that comics have died because of messaging, or messaging exists because the comics had already died?
There are many reasons for the collapse of the industry, and the main reason is never spoken. It's the rise of video games. We have a whole generation or two here who never got into the habit of reading comics because they were hooked first on video games. And the fact of the matter is that a good video game delivers a lot more entertainment for your dollar than a $5 comic. The second reason, of course, is the collapse of the distribution system. There's no ready cure for that. The internet is wiping out print media all over, and I hate that. I love print media, but people love comics, and they love comics they can hold in their hands. So comics will always be with us. The question is, how are people going to get those comics? And that brings us to an interesting factor that a whole bunch of us who are no longer in the industry, for a whole bunch of reasons, are crowdfunding our comics. Some crowdfunding comics bring in $7,000 and the creator is happy. Some crowdfunding comics bring in $3 million and the creator is very happy. We're all familiar with Eric July and ISOM. $3 million he earned off that first book. I know other creators who've earned millions of dollars after their crowdfunded comics. And one of the reasons is that those of us who do it, we interact with our fans on a much more intimate level. We communicate with them, we talk to them, we answer their letters, and we deliver. Now, a lot of independent comics makers have a problem delivering on time, but the professionals at the top, the Comicsgate kings, if you will, we don't have that problem. We deliver. The Private American is my third crowdfunded comic with Chris Brawley, who runs my programs. The first was Florida Man. The second was Thin Blue Line. Thin Blue Line was about two police officers trying to survive a night of rioting. It was obviously inspired by real events, but as always, my goal was to entertain with an exciting, dramatic story, and I did that. And the reception was overwhelming. That raised over six figures. And police officers from all over the country contacted me to tell me how grateful they were that I was portraying them in a positive light, because that's so freakish these days, and it shouldn't be. Now, we all know there are bad cops. I admit there are bad cops. Those aren't the cops I'm writing about. The cops I'm writing about are people who join the force to be a positive force in their community. My artist, Joe, is a full-time police officer, and he still managed to finish that book faster than many professionals.
Do you think that could be ultimately the future of the comics industry then is that the big players will
I
ultimately
do.
dissolve, and it's going to come down to independents
I
who are
do.
going to replace them.
And I think that we're heading toward an exclusive Comicsgate website where you can order all our books.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a site right now. It's called comicsgate.org, which you should check out. A lot of people there, a lot of good stuff.
Well, I mean, not to worry though, because according to Kevin Feige, these mainstream comics, and particularly the movies that they make out of them, are never going to end. And if you could indulge me for a second, he
What a
gave an
threat.
interview recently to Variety, where they talked a little bit about this, the potential for like fatigue with the comic book movies, particularly now that the MCU has been going for 15 years now, I think, started in 2008.
Right.
Comics or superhero movies in general, they've been around since, well, the sort of Superman movies, but like the current era is at least the early 2000s. So he was asked about this, and he said, "Well, I don't really understand the question, because to me it was akin to saying after Gone with the Wind, well, how many more movies can be made off of novels? Do you think the audience will sour on movies being adapted from books? You would never ask that, because there's an inherent understanding amongst most people that a book can be anything. A novel can have any type of story whatsoever. So it all depends on what the story you're translating. Non-comic readers don't understand that it's the same thing in comics." Now, I guess most of us here could probably point out a few logical fallacies to that. Like, books are very, very varied, and like superhero comics, not so much. And I think particularly what Marvel does with these comics, like kind of homogenizing them and basically producing the same movie again and again, kind of has that opposite effect where you've narrowed down your possibilities for what you can produce to the point where they're even mocking it themselves in their own TV shows. Like She-Hulk's just making fun of the fact that basically an AI produces their material.
It's almost a sad realization that Kevin's sitting there being like, oh, come on, it's not like going to wipe out all of books adaptations just because one of them does well or there's a couple of others that are out. And we're all sitting here like, no, yeah, that's true. There's loads of different books, all kinds of different stories across all kinds of eras. Like, yeah, you're right. You can make movies forever. And it's like, does that apply to comics? Like, well, it fucking should. But unfortunately, you scramble up all of the comics in history and then you produce like this sludge pile of all of them essentially being indistinguishable, all about the same sort of beats. Nothing makes any sense. All the characters are all over the place, and you've taken away. It's funny how much I like, say, Iron Man in phase like 1, 2, 3 sort of thing, and then I have Gary and others telling me it's like you've seen like fucking 0.5% of his storyline, right? And it's like, oh yeah, you have all these characters, and then so many of them are dead. And they haven't even like done a majority of the biggest impactful stories from the source material. So it's just funny to hear him be like, oh, we got all this potential. But it's like you pride yourself on having made a formula where all of these different, disparate, amazing, interesting, creative comics all get crushed down into this massive industry of this machine with the Kevin's slap of approval on it, where they all end up the same. Nobody can remember the plot lines of any of these movies anymore.
Well, there's a quote.
Just because they just all get longer and longer and make less and less sense with every iteration. It's amazing how they keep doing it.
That's because they seem to. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, well, there's a quote here that it really stuck with me for all the wrong reasons, where he said, "There's 80 years of the most interesting, emotional, groundbreaking stories that have been told in the Marvel comics, and it's our great privilege to be able to take what we have and adapt them. Another way to do that is adapting them into different genres and what types of movie we want to make." Now, just that first bit, for some reason, triggered some kind of existential dread in me, where I was like, oh my god, there's another 80 fucking years of Marvel movies ahead of us. These things are still going to be going when we're fucking worm food.
The problem that they've done is that they've forgotten to tell the good story. They're like, okay, we got 80 years, but are you going to pick the good ones? You keep changing them into these, intersectional DEI policies. Like, make sure that from the casting director to the writer, everybody fits into this quota. It's like, what the hell happened to good story? Because if they continue to go along with a good story, like, for example, we all have favorite movies or favorite series. Like, I love The Winter Soldier. I can watch that over and over. I watch Lord of the Rings multiple times a year. I don't get tired of it because I enjoy it. It's a piece of art. It pulls me in. But how many of the modern superhero movies can you watch after one time and go, ugh?
Well, it's when he talked as well about same point actually that we can adapt them into different genres, and I think like my initial reaction is, yeah, great, you could, you never have though. Every movie that you made has been exactly the same. It's just the same basic formula, the same basic emotional tone, the same style. It's all homogenized. Like I would love to see, you know, wildly tonally different Marvel movies. You know, like if you were going to do a Black Widow movie, theoretically, you could have made it this really dark, really serious piece of espionage thriller drama that would have been awesome. But what you got was just the same Disney-fied template with bloodless violence and crazy, like, over-the-top action sequences and a big explosive finale that's really heavy on CGI, just like every other Marvel movie ever. Like, that's not adapting it into different genres. That's taking a whole bunch of different stories and forcing them into the same template.
There's also the question of selection of source material, because it's true to say that, yes, you've got 80 years of good comics runs that you could be potentially adapting, but there does seem to me to be a skew toward the more recent comics creations as well. So then, you know, you have the introduction of characters I don't think have a very long history in the comics universe. Riri Williams would be one of them, America Chavez. Yeah, who was the? There was another one. Yeah, really, really lovely girl. But none of these characters actually. Oh, Ms. Marvel as well is another one. They've got quite recent comics runs, and as far as I know, they didn't do particularly well in their comics runs. But those are the ones that they're very intent on pushing onto the screen, as opposed to going back and selecting
Legacy?
the most tried, tested, and famous and successful of all the comics runs that they could potentially be adapting. If they went and straightforwardly adapted something from 40 years ago, that would be different. But if your studio is saying, what can we lift from the last 5 years of comics productions, you're not going to introduce very many interesting characters.
I agree.
Yeah, you look at Iron Man getting his selection of stories that I think at this point you'd be like, well, at least he got that. It's like, and then you look at someone like Hulk and you're like, good God. Compare that to how much, because I'm not even that familiar with comics, but I know for a fact that Hulk is beloved in the comics for many of the different stories. It's like, look at him in the MCU. Oh, what have you done?
You don't like Professor Hulk?
Well, it's funny, right? Because you're like, well, it can't get any worse than this, right? Then you look at Thor, and you're like, oh
no.
I mean, they've turned Thor into a buffoon.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Obviously, you can see how it happened too. Ragnarok happened. They're like, Taika's a funny guy. Thor can be funny. Let's make him funny. And then they made it so much of a joke that no one's laughing anymore. And then they're like, uh-oh.
Well, I think that ties into what I said about, like, it's like Marvel being a victim of their own success, where they had all these elements that worked well in the early phases, and their strategy, I guess, going forward was just to amp up all of those elements that worked, but they do it to the point where they stop working because they've become so ridiculous and so over the top. You know, the humor works, like the funny jokes in Thor Ragnarok worked. Let's just, like you said, turn Taika loose and just let him, you know, explore the wildest excesses of his crazy mind with Love and Thunder, and that's what you got. You got a movie that's so ridiculous you can't take a single scene in it seriously because it's not meant to be.
Well, not to plug unsuitably your video on your show, but I thought your comparison of that scene in Ragnarok with the scene in Love and Thunder perfectly summarizes something that changed over those years. The effort, the intention. So
there was meaning behind that scene in Ragnarok. Well, you know, whether you love that movie or hate it, at least there was thought that was put into how scenes were structured and what they did for the plot and what they showed you about the characters. And yeah, the same scene, the mentality was just, well, this thing was funny in the previous movie, let's just do it again. But it doesn't serve any purpose this time. It's just there to eat up screen time. And that's the movie in a nutshell, really.
So what do you think, Drinker? What do you all think? Do you think, like Feige says, that it could last for many more years?
He's I mean,
I know he's saying that, but what do y'all think?
I mean, I don't think he's going to come out and say, like, yeah, you know, we can tell that things are on the backslide here, and we're kind of like fucked, really. We're just running at the clock until people stop
it's all
watching
being
our
banked
films.
on Ant-Man, all right? Everything depends on Ant-Man now.
Oh god.
No, yeah, because I genuinely think it would be fine if it was good. They could keep going forever probably if they were good, but they've been so shit again and again and again and again and again that everyone is looking around like, how long has this got before it's gonna fucking die?
Well, isn't it interesting that the question's even being asked of him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a few years ago, nobody would have even bothered to ask something like this because it's like, well, it's not even something that's entered into our heads that the end could be coming. Maybe people are getting bored of this. Maybe it's not so good anymore. The fact that they're even asking him, it's like a chink in the armor. It's just exposing the insecurity that exists there.
When Phase 1, 2, 3, there was always, since like even the first set of films, like they were building up a big story. Those stones, and even comic readers would be like, "Oh, you film fans, that's setting up a guy called Thanos." Like, interesting. Phase 4, like, does anyone know what's happening in Phase 4? There's been more shit in Phase 4 than like what is it like the combined Phase 1, 2, and 3, like Phase 4 has already got essentially like the same amount of fucking storytelling. It's insane. And how does any of it connect? You're like, oh, don't worry, several of them have multiversal stories. They all made sense, right?
But do you care? The question is, MauLer, do you care what's happening? See, I think in Phase 1 through 3, people cared. I mean, you couldn't wait till the next bit of news would come out.
Yeah.
Because you had this, not only the connectivity to that, but you had some really entertaining stories, like Michael kept saying. It's about entertainment. It seems like they're not entertaining anymore. I mean, I used to look forward to all those Marvel movies, good or bad. I'd be like, when's the next one? I want to see what's going to happen next. Now I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
Well, I think they're trying to entertain you, but they're trying to entertain in the most just like superficial, brain dead way, like the lowest common denominator way of entertaining people, where it's like, we're going to give you funny jokes that you can laugh at in the moment and then not think about again. We're going to give you bright colors and lots of exploding things on screen and the best that our CGI artists could come up with in 5 minutes, kind of, special effects.
We couldn't decide if they want a crown at the end or a hat, so
I
don't wear
started
anything.
watching Morbius.
Just make it in post.
And it started off well, and I had high hopes for it. It was really intelligent until they turned into these cartoon roadrunners zapping around the screen. And at that point, I thought, how can I take this seriously? And I bailed.
Poor Jared Leto.
Having like one character per character, so to speak. Like the multiversal shit is making it so difficult to get invested.
Yeah.
I think the average consumer right now, you should be like, do you know what Thor's storyline is from start to finish in the MCU? They'd be like, no. I got no clue. I don't even know if that's Thor anymore. Like, is that some other guy?
I think the average Marvel consumer would be like, "What's a storyline?"
That's a good one.
It's almost like it's turned into an anthology. Like it's conscious that it's like, look, this isn't connected anymore. We'll claim it is, and we'll definitely pat ourselves on the back for having a wide, interconnected universe. We'll just keep telling everyone that. Hopefully, they'll believe it.
But here's something else. Were the stories mediocre, but they had great charismatic talent, and that didn't exist anymore? Or were the stories great and the talent just added to it? Because where is your RDJ or your Chris Evans? I mean, you got Hemsworth, but where is that draw? That.
I would say, like, I think Love and Thunder is actually a pretty great example, right? We had Christian Bale, and he's not a bad actor. He's fucking good.
No,
he's a great actor.
I love Christian. I just saw him in the Edgar Allan Poe film.
The Blue Eye. The Pale Blue Eye.
I loved it.
The Pale, yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, so what happened there? And it's like, well, it's the writing. What the hell is he going to do? Yeah. You can only elevate, shit so far. This is like... Because Gore was all over the place. The amount of people on the internet were just fucking disappointed by what they did with Gore. And then all I get to hear every time they do this is like, do you know what the comic book Gore is like? Let me tell you. Then they explain it. It's like, wow, that sounds so much more interesting and better. Okay.
Yeah, I think part of it comes down to I think part of it comes down to now, especially like we're going to find cheaper alternatives to these actors. Because obviously guys like RDJ and Scarlett Johansson and stuff, they're going to get more and more expensive as they go.
I don't have a big problem with that because honestly, for every great actor out there, there's 100 other great actors we haven't heard of just waiting for their chance.
Well, yeah, I think so, but I think even they're obviously going to take time to grow into roles and so on, and it just feels like they pick people that are cheaper and newer and they'll do their little stint in the MCU and then they'll move on to something else and they'll get replaced by somebody else beyond that. And I don't know. I don't feel like maybe it's going to be a real commitment for many actors now. It's just going to be a gig that they do. Kind of like when they bring in directors to do these movies, like they're not really directing them. They're just there to have their name attached to them. You know, the special effects guys and the second unit guys, they all do the actual directing of the films.
Thank you, Bloodshot.
Did anyone actually see that movie?
Oh, I saw it with Vin Diesel.
Yeah, I did.
I did.
I don't know why.
It was supposed to be a series.
It wasn't bad. Bad timing. Came out just as the COVID hit. But it wasn't bad. It was better than I would say, but than most of the recent Marvels.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
better than most recent Marvels. but again, is it the fact that we're missing? I guess I'm trying to get to the point. Was the story that solid that it didn't require the actors with that kind of magnetism? Because who in the MCU's Phase 4, like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, can you remember anyone that sticks out in your mind today from that film outside of Cumberbatch? I mean, that you go, wow, that's like the next RDJ. That's the next Johansson.
I mean, Elizabeth Olsen's,
she's
she's a good actress. It's just like, she's obviously wasted in the role.
Just goes back again. Just the writing sucks.
You're like
having the writing bringing them all down. Is that what it is? Is the writing bringing the actors down, or the actors just don't have the magnitude?
I think fundamentally, the writing is probably the problem.
That's it. The script is the most important element of any movie.
Because some of these actors, they were in the better films, right?
Exactly,
like Infinity War is often praised for a decent script, and Elizabeth Olsen in that performs really well when she has to kill Vision, right? And it's like in this, it's like, what's the drama? And it's like, oh, her children seeing her do something that makes them terrified of her when all she wants is to be with them, and then she acts accordingly. And it's like, oh well, if the script were anything close to consistent, and oh well, that's all I can say every time.
Actors can only go with what they're given, but it's also, I think, worth remembering in phases 1 to 3 that you had some of the best films starring some of the Chris Evans. I don't think is a particularly good actor in the sense of he doesn't have a tremendous emotional range. I think he's very good in that role. He's very good in that role because the role just plays up all of his strengths, and he was in some of the more interesting of the phase 1 to 3 films. Winter Soldier, Civil War, has its issues, but it's more engaging than anything that comes out in phase 4. You can elevate relatively mundane and boring actors with a really good script, but the most brilliant actor in the world can't elevate a bad script beyond a certain degree. I mean, you can look at let's hypothetically, even Multiverse of Madness, let's say Benedict Cumberbatch did a spectacular job. I think it was just kind of meh, but let's say he did a spectacular job. It's not going to make Multiverse of Madness make sense because the script is complete garbage. You've introduced a multiverse which basically destroys the very concept of stakes, and stakes is key to any writing endeavor. The reason you can forgive relatively subpar entries in phases 1 to 3, like Iron Man 3, is because you have understandable, knowable stakes in the meta story that you're invested in. You still know what the thing is pointing toward, and you know what failure looks like. Whereas Multiverse of Madness, a character is dead, supposedly. Are they really, though? Or are they just going to be dropped back into the scene from the Multiverse 2 films' time? Is Elizabeth Olsen coming back? Probably yes. So what was the point in that death scene?
It's not going to happen.
Part of what's so insane to me is that, like, if you pitch that in some kind of board meeting, like, we have access to anyone now. We can just throw them in there. Any actor, any role, any character, just boom, we can throw them in. It's like, okay, let's do some cool stuff. And it's like, cool stuff. What if Professor X and Reed Richards are just murdered? It's like, I don't know why would people want to. It's like, isn't that cool and funny? And you're like,
man, that whole scene.
They're trying to get Cumberbatch back to do Sherlock Holmes, and I hope they do, because his Holmes was brilliant, and it was a BBC production, and they take their storytelling a lot more seriously than Hollywood.
Yeah,
I loved him in Sherlock Holmes. I thought he was great.
But then you can see it with other actors within the MCU, like someone like Hemsworth. He's great now, but like if you look at the early Thor movies, it's not particularly good. Like he had to really grow into that role, and it took a long time for him to really nail the character and figure out what he was doing with it. Like, initially it was just pretty mediocre.
Yeah, and then it turns him into a joke as a present. It's like, oh, you're doing great. No, you're ruining your character.
But I think he really came into his own with the Avengers, and like kind of that's really what gave him his springboard. But then you look at Scarlett Johansson, another great actress, but her early roles in like Iron Man 2, she's pretty shit because the material that she was given was just a nothing burger. Like there was no real personality to her. To her
She was
Black
just-
Widow.
Yeah, she was eye
Avengers, again, is the one
candy.
that changed her up and gave her a. Like it's weird. Avengers is this ensemble movie that is supposed to be all about like a big team up, but Scarlett Johansson was one of the most benefited by that. I think it gave her a shit ton of character.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny now because we look back at Phase 1 and we just kind of assumed that they were all big successes. They kind of weren't. Like if you look at their box office, they weren't huge compared to what movies make now. It was just like, they were competently successful, and some of them were really good films. Like Iron Man 1 was great fun. Then you had Hulk, that was kind of shit. And, the first Captain America wasn't that well received, although I look back on it now quite fondly. But it was the Avengers that really catapulted the whole thing into high gear. Like, without that, it would have just floundered.
I remember the hype for that was unreal, and it felt weird, too. It was just like, wait, that's the guy from that movie, that's the guy from that other movie, and that's the other... And they're all people we recognize. People know Thor. People know Captain America. And look, they're kind of cool now.
Ironically, that was the movie that scuppered the DCEU as well. It was like Warner saw that and they're like, we need that now. It's like, wait, we haven't done any of the other movies. We need to set this up. Doesn't matter. Just make a movie like that right now.
Do it.
Okay.
Do it.
Yeah. The rest is history.
I still think the MCU should have taken like a year break at least after Endgame.
Good point.
Yeah.
Just chill the
Like
fuck
a
out.
decade break.
Or decade, whatever. Just don't do
sit down.
another movie right away.
Yeah, let people miss it. You're great.
Yes, exactly.
Let
Yeah.
people miss it. Let them, fondness. Oh.
It's like they had to just keep the money rolling in for the investors.
Oh yeah. And then
Well,
Disney Plus happened, so we need content.
Yeah.
What kind of content? Doesn't matter. Just give it to someone. They'll make it happen.
That
TV
sort
show,
of
come
shit.
on.
That whole
I got to
idea
tell
that
you,
meant
The first Captain America movie was released in 1990. It was directed by Albert Pyun,
I remember.
and it starred Matt Salinger, who's J.D. Salinger's son. And you've probably never heard of it. And there's
I've heard of it.
I've seen it.
were those movies done as like rights retainers or something back in the day? Like it was was it not one of those
Fantastic
weird
Four
things?
one was, right?
Because they had a
Remember that.
Spider-Man
was,
one that
yeah.
was done, I think, in the late 70s or 80s. There was a Spider-Man television series.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Hey, I got to bail. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on for this.
See you all
Lovely to meet
again
you.
in the future.
All right.
Catch you around.
Great to meet
Catch
you.
you later.
So let me ask you this: we know the writing in this Phase 4 sucks. Like, here's an example. I've asked people, do you know who the villain is? And like, does Kang actually frighten you? People used to get excited and frightened by Thanos, like thinking of Thanos. One day we're gonna see him. Like, do any of you think of like, yeah, Kang? Because in the comic book, he's someone you'd be terrified of, but here you're kind of like,
I'm sure in the
Thanos was
comic
always
books they
hinted at.
They put the work in to make him threatening. In this one, we had him in Loki once, and he was like, "Haha, you're gonna do this." Oh,
They,
now he's dead.
they
And now he's
fucking
coming back in
celebrated him
Ant-Man.
in the
It's like,
meta
oh,
as having
okay.
professional cloud trading. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Why was that something they told us?
I don't know.
Okay.
And every time a movie came, it was like, "Oh, they're gonna have to introduce him again now, or one of his versions." Or I don't even know how it exactly works with his character, but there's like multiple versions as far as I recall, or something.
multiverse.
Multiverse, yeah. but
If you're going to introduce a character like this, like meant to be the big bad that's going to be your real threat moving forward, and it's like you introduce him in a Disney Plus streaming show and then don't really mention him again for the entire phase.
yeah.
No one's going to even remember that he's a thing which exists. Like most of the audience won't even have heard of him.
Well,
it's-
really,
it's-
the information we have from him from the Loki show might not be relevant. It might be a different Kang with different experiences, and so this guy we knew from
point.
that is kind of he's almost like foreshadowing. I don't even know anymore.
Was this whole phase just we don't quite know what to do, but we need to fill it up with something,
Yeah,
and so
pretty
it's
much.
just holdover movies and just standalone adventures with no real thread to
Yeah,
tie it
'cause
all together, and then we'll figure it out for Phase 5.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they took this phase to carry that thought on, like Netflix. Like, we just need to pump out the content. Well, we don't care. Just keep Marvel's name in people's minds. Except they forgot. This is what happened to Westerns. I mean, there was a time in American cinema where they thought Westerns were going to be the staple forever. I mean, they would go on and on, Westerns, until they were just horrible. You're like, okay,
Well, every genre has its day ultimately, and westerns died spectacularly, but you know,
The other
comic
thing
book
is
movies are still limping along.
Just about. I mean, yeah, you can make the point from genre fatigue, and I suspect there's a little bit of that setting in the sense that the audience is less forgiving now, but then they are encouraged to be less forgiving because what are we forgiving for anymore? But the other point, though, I think, is that Phase 4 does coincide with the launch, the rise, and the publicity around Disney Plus and streaming services, and you need to get off the ground quickly with your streaming service. You need a constant range of content. It has to keep coming in a way that it didn't used to have to when you were just concerned with cinema box office. Now you need a pitch to subscribers, and you need a pitch to investors based on subscribers who are coming in, because this is the place to watch all of the Marvel stuff. So we need to keep putting out the Marvel stuff, and we need to keep buying and putting out Star Wars stuff, and we need to keep doing content, because otherwise, well, people will get bored and drift away to Paramount Plus or Peacock or somewhere else. And I think that probably has a large part to do with it, is that you can't take a break from content anymore. You can't take a break to relax. You can't plan stories years in advance and give yourself 2 years to work it out, because what then are people subscribing to Disney Plus for anymore?
Well,
I think what you get as well.
Keep the story simple.
Yeah.
Don't
what you
go
get.
like, look at the quantum verse, multiverse, dimension. We actually don't know what we call it, but we all use different names. It's like, yeah, if you don't know what's going on, we definitely don't.
What you get as well is the ultimate, like, pointless stories that kind of reset themselves by the end, like something like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which starts off with Sam Wilson like not sure if he's ready to take up the shield, and by the end he's kind of ready to take up the shield. Like, it's just like the entire show leading up to that point, it just gets him right back to where he was at the beginning. And it's designed that way because it can be pumped out onto Disney Plus, and if you're a movie viewer but you don't have Disney Plus, you can safely miss it, and it doesn't matter a jot because it's just the same thing.
Except
that's it. You just nailed it. It doesn't matter. You just nailed it. It doesn't matter. That's why they don't care.
Need to, though, don't you? I mean, that's part of the. I was going to say the con, maybe con's too strong a word, but that's part of the marketing pitch, is there are certain pieces of information which you will kind of need to know from the streaming service shows in order to make sense of what happens in the next big budget mainline cinematic production. So I don't think there's been a cinematic recognition of the fact that Sam Wilson is now Captain America. So when he turns up in the next film as Captain America with no lead-in, the audience might be left thinking, when did this...
you say that,
he was given the shield at the end of Endgame, so it's like you can infer quite logically, okay, well, he's now Captain America.
Yeah, to give an example that is closer to what I think you're saying, because when you said Big Con, I was like, yeah, it's kind of a lie almost. I think I brought this up on a different stream, but you watch Multiverse of Madness and you might be like, what's this book thing? Where's that? And then a friend says, hey, check out WandaVision, you'll know all about it. You watch WandaVision and you'll be like, okay, this makes less sense now. I don't even know what's going on. Like, because you'll find out about Vision, you'll find out about the family, you'll find out about her powers and all the crazy shit that happened, and then a sword. You'll find out them as an organization. You'll find out about Monica Rambeau, right? Yeah,
Monica Rambeau.
Like, what the fuck is happening with it? And yeah, it's just like, okay, that was helpful in no way at all. And I think that watching Captain Winter Soldier show, that's just going to make things even make less sense, and that's the problem with all these fucking shows.
Is it you were saying as well? Is another WandaVision thing that you might theoretically need to watch WandaVision to know the existence of, and Scar, who was introduced for 5 seconds in She-Hulk, if he ever comes back in a cinematic thing, you're going to have to say, well, you're going to have to go and suffer She-Hulk to find out who the hell he is and where he came from. Well, actually, no, you wouldn't even find it out because there's no explanation, but to know that he exists in the universe. I think they are tying it in, and I think they'll tie it in more as time goes on. It's like with The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Well, you start off with The Mandalorian and Grogu's back, and then you think, well, the last time I watched The Mandalorian, Grogu was gone. So when did this happen? And then the answer is, well, you're going to have to go back and watch the Book of Boba Fett to find out. Don't you just love that idea?
To watch those episodes that don't have Boba Fett in them to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, the horrifying reality is that the whole Boba Fett concept was just like part of like the next season of Mandalorian mashed into a whatever Boba Fett story they could concoct in the space of about 10 minutes.
That's the theory, and it makes the most sense. Those 2 episodes of Mandalorian that are in the Boba Fett show, they seem like they were episodes 1 and 2 of season 3, and that they just got yanked out and put into Boba Fett to boost it up a bit. Because you remember everyone was like, man, Like episode 1 of Boba Fett was okay, 2 was 3 was it's getting real bad, and then the Mandalorian episode shows up. Everyone goes, "Oh, that was great! Yeah,
Oh,
woo!"
amazing.
I was like, and it was even filmed differently and clearly had a higher budget. It was just like,
Yeah.
what is going on? What is this season of Boba Fett with no Boba Fett?
The thing is, we can't apply actual analysis to any of the Star Wars TV shows because they don't hold up to that kind of thing. It's like
What?
with Marvel, with the MCU, it's like a big creaking juggernaut where bits are starting to fall off it and stuff, and it's starting to slow down. But like with Star Wars, it's just a pile of rubble. Like there's not even, it doesn't even have the basis of a story at this point.
Well, yeah,
You know,
and
I feel
Andor is the
bad for
equivalent of,
that.
like,
Andor, I liked Andor. I thought it was slow in some place, but it was good.
there's a pile of rubble and then there's a little cake next to it, and you're like, That's, "Oh, okay." There it
Yeah.
is.
Can I have that cake? It's like, no.
No,
Yeah.
No.
no cake for you. More rubble.
Rubble.
For Andor, like the cake is within like 5 layers of like packaging that you have to take all like hours to unlock to get to the
What's
cake.
the thing, right? If you are a customer looking to buy something, it's like, you want to get the Boba Fett show, the Kenobi show, the show about the guy from Rogue One. Yeah, if you want, I guess, that's there too. And it's like, turns out, oh, that was the one you wanted to pick, actually, out of all of them.
Yeah.
Would have thought the Obi-Wan Kenobi show would be like possibly the worst thing they ever made.
Yeah. It's ironic they put the most effort into the least popular thing.
And that to me tells me that like anybody who assumes like we're just hyper biased against Disney, it's like we go to bat for a show that like nobody cares about. Like why? It's like, well, because if you watch it, you'd be like, well, it's good.
Yeah.
Man, just talking about all these bad shit just makes me sad because I've been watching some good stuff lately. When I was over at MauLer's place, we watched all of IT Crowd, which is like, holy shit, that's some good shit. And I, for the very first time, watched. I've been going through Star Trek TNG all the way through. I just watched The Measure of a Man for the first time.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, holy fuck, that's some S+ tier content.
Remember when Star Trek used to deal in like really interesting ideas?
Yeah, Mel, you should watch Star Trek Discovery.
I probably will at some point and cry. I don't know.
actually used, because I've done a sort of mini critique series on Star Trek Discovery, just comparing it with some of the writing in The Next Generation, because there are almost sort of direct plot lifts from The Next Generation. There is a part, for example, where the Discovery's computer, there's a debate over whether it's become sentient. And I thought, well, that sounds familiar because we've done that, the question of data sentience in The Next Generation, and Picard, there's a whole philosophical conversation about it. Star Trek Discovery's answer is that it has feelings now, and that's it. So it's not sentient, so it's all good.
Yeah, but the reason because I bring up that episode, not only because I watched it, but it's a 45-minute episode, and it's so dense with good content. Like every line is basically meaningful. I don't think there's a single line that's wasted here. Like it's either character, it does the story, it stays in the continuity of the show from what you've seen so far. I was baffled after I watched it. It's like, this is unreal. Like, what happened?
Oh, dude, that's the thing. Like, remember, like Batwoman seasons 1 through 3. Every episode.
I'm talking about good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Those were forced to be 45 minutes. It's just like, Christ. Because the thing about Velma is like at least 20 minutes.
Oh, you had to say it, didn't you? Why did you say that name?
Well, it's just like saying Willow. It's like I had reviewed Willow, and
they were like 40 minutes for me.
Yeah, they were. So I think one was 50 or 2 or 50. I've never seen someone actually take the namesake of the show and they're like, yeah, you're going to be a side character that we're going to mock until the very end. And then we're just going to mock everything.
I don't know, man. That sounds familiar these days, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Take the main character of an IP and make them a side character we humiliate. Yeah, the point, all I was trying to say was just he's talking about the density of like amazing content within something like Star Trek at a 45-minute almost mandate, I imagine. That's what they had to reach for their time slot. Meanwhile, you have shows like Batwoman or Velma or whatever else that are like, you got to reach 45 minutes. And they're like, how the fuck are we going to do that? How could you make us do that?
Just and now you have Jonathan Kasdan who's like, I'm fighting for season 2. I'm like,
when you did reference good things there, Metal, and one thing that seems to have been relatively good so far has been The Last of Us. We're now 2 episodes in, and it's weird. The consensus just kind of seems to be it's doing all right so far. Like, well done. I'm nervous, but I'm relatively happy with what I've seen.
Because I haven't played the games. I know what happens in the games, and from what I can tell so far, it's staying pretty close to the games, even elevating some of the scenes that happen in the games. From what I've heard, obviously people need to tell me because I've just watched it on my own, just to have it in mind.
It's complicated.
I want to play the game. Okay. I want to play the game after watching it. I've been enjoying it.
I'll probably have like a stream arc this or next year where I play through all of them. It's 2.
No, I think you would have a lot of fun playing through it, but we find ourselves, I guess, in an interesting position here because MauLer and I played the games, and the rest of you guys haven't. So you're kind of coming into this show and just judging it on its own merits to a great extent.
I mean, I know of the games. I know the story, what happens. I know the beginning and the end of the first one, basically. And I know they got rid of the spores and everything. And that was kind of weird to hear. It's like, wasn't that like the big thing? So I was wondering how they handled that. And then they have like the weird blah, blah, blah thing, which I don't know how I feel about that. At least the way they portrayed it in that episode was kind of, why did you do it that way?
Not sure exactly what they were going for with that now.
It weirded me out a little bit. It was like...
MauLer and I were talking about that, where it's like Tess is obviously planning to end her own life and take out as many of them as she can. And it's like, so she scatters gasoline across the floor, and there seems to be hand grenades that fall out of a box, but then she uses a lighter to ignite the gasoline. Yeah. It's like, you've literally got grenades all around you that you could just pull the pin on. And
to be honest with you, cracking open 2 grenades, putting them next to your head, and letting them explode, that's going to be way quicker than lighting yourself on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a horrible way to go.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want that. It's like, like you say, I'll just blow up. That'll be it.
Wouldn't recommend that way to go now.
I think the most interesting part is probably going to be, if it stays that way, I guess the first season is going to be pretty good, story-wise, if they stand by the game. From what I know about the games, because people like them, they can still cock it up, of course, because there's like the fear that they're going to change things to make it fit better for the second part.
See, that's what bothers me. That's what I'm worried about. Because Az was saying that, like Last of Us, he goes, the first season, he goes, is very much like the first game. But he goes, the second season, they've already said it's going to be Last of Us 2. And he says, that's like a horrible game. I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. He's like, just trust me. My problem with HBO is that they can put out some amazing stuff. Even crap looks really well. Except we've been traumatized from Game of Thrones and everything else they've done. So it's like, is this going to last? Like, is episode 3 where it falls off the cliff? Is it episode 4?
I think, I mean, I guess we can only judge it based on what we've seen so far, which is, fair enough. Like, and it hasn't been bad. Like, it's been pretty faithful to the games, so I can't criticize it for that. I think there's little niggles that have started to come up. Like, from that first episode, I wasn't a big fan of the actress playing Ellie, and I'm still not. I'm still not sold on her, and I worry that that's not going to get any better as the story progresses.
I've enjoyed the first 2 episodes. A little slow some parts, but world building, I liked it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's. I guess it's meant to be fairly slow initially. Like, they are just setting up this world. They're letting you get tuned into it and building up the kind of different factions so you understand what's at stake here. I want to see more of the clickers and the infected because they're great. They're compelling, antagonists, I suppose.
On the special effects, I was quite surprised with how good the clickers look.
They look
pretty
right,
good. Yeah.
There was like 1 or 2 bits where like, once they've been down and they're just kind of lying on the ground, like you sort of see
that how they act.
No, they that's exactly how they act. It's more just like they look kind of like just a person that's got a prosthetic, head on, I suppose.
Well, I liked Anna Torv, who was playing Tess, because I've watched some of her films. I've always been a fan of hers. I thought she did a really good job. I was surprised that she was in this.
I thought she was fine. Yeah.
I was really liked her. The girl, like you said, there's just something about her. I can't put my finger on it. It just irks me.
Her face is wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say.
I don't know.
Just a bit wrong.
Well, actually, funny. I had this conversation today and a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, have any of y'all noticed the fact that Hollywood used to have this aesthetic where the people, the actors that they would hire, were people that most would idolize. They were pleasant to look at. But today, everyone looks like your next door neighbor.
I mean, to some extent, I can understand the need to do that because, like, it's a post-apocalyptic world, so people aren't going to look like glamorous movie stars, and it's fine. I think it's just because you have an image of Ellie in your head from the games, and this girl just looks really different from that, and it's a bit weird. And I think it's coupled with like her unusual acting choices. It just kind of creates this slightly unusual element. But to pick up on what you said, because like we were comparing, our knowledge of the games versus what we see in the show, and we talked about this last week, and Rags raised a really good point when, I think Az and Melanie were particularly talking about the deviations from the games, and Rags was asking, like, well, why is that a bad thing? And it's a really valid question because, like, it's not to say that the games are the single greatest way that you can tell this story and everything has to be slavishly accurate to them. But I think the question comes down to, do I have faith in the writers of the show to replace the things that they've changed with something better? And a lot of the cases, the answer is probably no so far. I think it does its best when it just kind of follows what was laid out in the games.
Yeah, it's always this feeling in the back of your head. It's like, I know you don't have it to do the same way, but it worked. And I've seen a lot of shit the last couple of years, so I don't trust any of you. Please don't fuck it up. Please just don't.
That's exactly it. It's like I don't trust their capacity to do it, and I don't trust their intent to be faithful to these characters. I feel like, particularly because we know what happens in Last of Us 2, or some of us do, I feel like they're going to try and justify that with this first season, and that's going to have a knock-on effect of the characters.
That is the weird headspace. I think we were talking about this last time as well, which is that a lot of people at least are saying, well, so far it's stuck very closely to the games, and this is a good thing because the games did it really well, and that's a tenable argument. If you're going to deviate, you must improve, otherwise don't deviate. But uniquely, I think, with The Last of Us, you do have the known end point at which everyone has to flip on a dime and start saying, this will only be good if it does change from the games.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't that fascinating? Everyone's going to be desperate for them to be unfaithful once the time comes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Please don't be faithful to the source when you get to the last.
It's kind of a consensus argument, though, and the consensus being that, well, the creative choices they made in Last of Us Part 2 were bad, and so we don't want to see that reflected in the TV show. But then, yeah, it's like, okay, be accurate to the first game, but don't be accurate to the second game, because we liked the first game and we didn't like the second one. But then,
yeah, and that's why if there's a change, I usually just want to judge it for what it is. For it to give it really, let's go hyper autistic. Why not? We got like when Tommy gets separated from them in that initial part where everything's falling apart in the game. It's so they have a horde after them. He closes the door, but he can't close it all the way. A hand comes through, and so they're all like, blah, 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 and he's like, okay, go, run. I'll hold them off, and then I will run because I'm going to be faster than you guys. You're carrying a girl. I'm on my own. I'll make it. I'll regroup with you. Makes complete sense. Lines up completely with a horde chasing. Good. In the show, it's that the car crashes into their car. There's clearly a way he can jump over or go around, and he just goes like, nah, I'll have to regroup with you guys. Oh well. And it really hit me. I was just like, dude, the whole fucking world is ending. You're gonna jump over the fucking hood of the truck.
Yeah.
You'll do that.
Wasn't it on fire or something? Like,
no, it is, but like, there's no way a guy of that age and that passion isn't jumping over that fucking car to get to his family. Everybody would do that in that situation. I mean, it's a small change, but I'm just like, why did you make it worse? You didn't have to make it worse. Like, but then, when Sarah's dying in his arms, I quite like that they had Joel in the show yell out to Tommy, like desperately, as though Tommy could do anything at all, and it just shows Tommy being like, I'm just standing there watching a girl bleed out. That's not in the game, and it's something I kind of like that they threw in. There's all these tiny little changes here and there that I end up trying to judge them individually as they come. I'm like, you change that from the original, I can see the point of it, and I kind of like it. Or I could be like, why did you do that? It's worse. What are you doing? Stop. Sort of thing. So, yeah, whether maybe I'm one of the more controversial ones here, but I don't actually care how faithful they are. I care how well executed the whole thing is.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. But do you all think that this is like the first really well done, at least so far, with the first 2 episodes, video game to live action? Because everybody who's tried that, we had
Yeah, I
Cowboy
think so.
Bebop from Netflix, which was just.
I think this is probably the best they've done in terms of just its own objective merits in terms of storytelling, the quality of it and stuff. We've had other, video game adaptations that have captured some of the spirit of the games. Like you had back in the 90s, you had the Mortal Kombat movie, or you had the Tomb Raider movies or the Resident Evil movies. Like they've done some of that, but like the quality wasn't really there. This I think is pretty good, pretty accurate, sticks to the games pretty closely. We're arguing really over minor niggles.
And I think the key factor is respect. I get a sense that they respect the Last of Us 1. They're not shitting on it, at least so far.
What's interesting in that sense is, though, that they told the actors to not play the game or something, but then they kept that close to it. It's just weird.
It is weird.
Like, why? Like, why? If you keep that close, why do you keep that? Tell them to not play the game. Like,
I mean, she seems to act quite different from the game version of Ellie in that sense, and I don't know if how much of that is a creative choice or how much of it is just like her acting range maybe isn't quite there. It's hard to tell, really.
Didn't she say in an interview that she just watched someone play it anyway?
She secretly watched a couple of playthroughs, but you sort of wonder whether, when the deviation comes, if the deviation comes, it will have something to do with her character. If she's the one that they've told, don't play the source material, it might be because they don't want her to be particularly wedded to the source material, because her character will change significantly from the source material at some point, so maybe don't poison the well.
But isn't that one of the problems, Little Platoon, what's going on? We've had a lot of people say that. Remember the Halo series that came out? You had their directors and their producers were saying they didn't want the cast to know anything about it. It used to be where you had learn as much as you could about the story, about the character. So you could have a connection to it. Now it's like, no. We don't want you to know anything about it because we're creating something whole new. We're just using the name.
Yeah, there was the interview with, I think it was one of the Marvel Studios heads who said that, we deliberately hire writers who don't know the comics and aren't familiar with the comics, because what we're doing now is fundamentally different, and we don't want people to be strangled by their adherence to long established, very successful and well loved characters. So I think that is a problem. It's just, again, The Last of Us presents the interesting quandary, being that there is a point at which we are going to start championing that because we don't like what the source material did. So there's no hard and fast rule with these deviations. Ideally, if the thing is done well originally, you do it that way, but there is some merit to not being too wedded to that if you are going to have to make a change at some stage.
Okay. Because after The Last of Us, we're going to have, Amazon's going to have Fallout. And so people are going to start comparing it, comparing the two.
God of War, Gears of War, Bioshock.
God of War.
We're going to have these conversations again and again.
Yeah.
Don't cock up God of War for me. I'll be so angry.
Imagine what they could do. Imagine what they could do with a faithful adaptation of the most recent God of War games. I guess you could leave out the early ones because
I remember seeing God of War games, the new ones. They're like a great example of taking the baggage from the old games and putting them into your game without shitting on the legacy of the game.
Yeah.
Even though the first couple of games can tend to be kind of goofy.
As far as I'm aware, the intention is to start on the Norse stuff, not the Greek stuff with this show they want to make. And I've seen a lot of fans be like, boo, that's a bad idea. But I was just sitting there like, it's going to be hard for them to turn the Greek games into a TV show that's not...
Not without it looking cheesy, huh?
They'd have to
but then how do you get a Spartan warrior into, like, Scandinavia and have him interact with Norse gods?
I think that the idea will be that they'll have to allude to his history a lot.
Right, okay.
I'm assuming that's what they're going to go for. Don't know. I'll give it a chance when we see it. I'm sure Jennifer Lawrence will do great as Kratos, but
she wrote the script too.
I'm sorry Jennifer Lawrence couldn't be on Open Bar tonight because she invented Open Bar.
Oh, damn.
Sorry, Jen.
The first movie I ever saw her in was, funny enough, it was called Winter's Bone. And I was like, who is this?
I've heard of that movie as well. Isn't it like one of those ones that's just like a matinee type thing, like
it is,
low budget?
But they heralded her at the time as, the next greatest actor to come in all of the world. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. Just Winter's Bone.
She obviously had the Hunger Games and stuff, but she just felt like the ultimate flavor of the month. Like, she was around for a few years, and she was just that typical kind of actress that has a shelf life and it's pretty short, and people just kind of lost interest. And she hasn't really headlined anything massive in years upon years.
What
and
was
it
the
was
last
such a big.
one?
Any good, by the way? I've never watched them, but I think they're still making them, are they?
I watched like 1.5 of them, and it was just Battle Royale, but like shittier.
I remember Battle Royale. That was funny. That was
Battle Royale was great.
Never read the creator of Hunger Games never read Battle Royale. Okay, so
Wow.
Oh, of course.
Bull fucking shit, son. It's literally the exact same setup. Yeah, it's like Battle Royale if Battle Royale was a YA novel. That's the kind of level it's at. And like I say, I haven't seen all of them, so maybe she grows into the role, but I've seen clips from the later movies that just made me cringe right out of my body. It's I don't know what they were hoping for with it, but yeah, like the only thing I remember her from after that was like she did Passengers, and that was a big deal because she got paid more than Chris.
Because she kept complaining about how she wasn't ever paid equally. Yeah.
See,
Well, yeah, but then the movie flopped. It's like, well,
Why did we pay you more?
Basically, I'm outraged. I hate the wage gap. Women should not be paid more than men. What is that about? Terrible.
Well, what is the last one? Didn't she do something where it was Red Sparrow, Red something, where she was a Russian spy, and they're like, Jennifer Lawrence shows her boobs. Like, yeah, everybody else already saw them.
It's because the fappening happened, and like she was like, "Well, I might as well commit to it now,"
Oh my god, I remember that. Yeah,
I was about to say, it's like, oh wow, that was so
when
long
did that happen?
ago.
Was that like
We've all blanked that movie.
Yes.
Wait, the Fappening was a movie?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about Red Sparrow.
I haven't seen Red Sparrow.
What's so funny is I saw an interview with her years ago, and she had said, "I am never going to do nudity because the fact that my father and mother are alive, and they're very conservative." And then it was a year later, you see the Fappening and then Red Sparrow. It's kind of like, well, doesn't matter now.
It's the tits of desperation thing. You used to have the old Hammer horror films. Hammer, the studio, used to do nothing but horror films, and it did all the old Draculas with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and it was going from the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. It was doing all right, and then it starts losing money and becoming less popular, and so into the 60s and the 70s, there's progressively more and bigger tits until it's really just softcore porn. And then the studio goes bust anyway, but that's the tits of desperation. You can tell if someone's not getting enough work because they are prepared to get out of their clothes more often.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't that like Roger Corman style? When he would do all those, when he would do all those.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I think, because he moved into softcore porn after he did all like sci-fi stuff and everything,
right.
Yeah. But it's weird. Like, it used to be that like you would hear about maybe an actress that's, you weren't too familiar with, but it's like, she's kind of hot in this movie, and then I'll look her up and see if she ever did topless scenes, and 9 times out of 10 she would have done it at some point in her career. Like, it was just a thing. You'd always be able to get a boob shot.
Right.
Now it's just like, no, you can't do it. Like, unless it's from something like The Fappening, But yeah, it's
objectified for people, disgusting people like you.
I know. Imagine finding like the opposite sex attractive, or the same sex, whichever.
But actually, you bring up a good point. When I was growing up, there used to be a lot of films where you had a lot of sex. I mean, mainstream films where they had a Basic Instinct or 9.5 Weeks. It's
You didn't even need that. Like, you used to get, like, now, I guarantee you in a mainstream movie, you won't even get the barest suggestion of cleavage or anything like that. It won't happen anymore.
Why do you think that's happened? I mean, does anybody remember a movie called 9.5 Weeks with Kim Basinger? It was Mickey Rourke, Kim Basinger.
I remember
like at the time, you understand, everyone was talking about it. I mean, you're talking about they did a documentary on it, like, is sex now polluting the mindset of the world? And when you look at it, it was nothing. She showed her butt and her boob.
Oh my god.
Both.
Corrupting the youth.
But it was all
as how I recently rewatched the Indiana Jones trilogy, and I think it applies to that and Star Wars. There's no there's no tits and ass in it, but
Right.
there's a bit of passionate intimacy that happens. There's a bit of a
Oh yeah.
you know, like and it's the kind of element that I think is actually gone from a lot of normal mainline films. They don't really throw in like a, dare I say, romance element that's more, like I said,
Well,
more passionate.
Well,
Compare- right, MauLer, here-
wasn't
here's-
the romance for the ages.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, here's a great point of comparison, right? Compare that scene in Empire with Leia and Han, like when they're in the Millennium Falcon, they're right up close to each other, and he's like kind of leaning in to her, like you can kind of feel the sexual tension in that scene. Like it's quite cool to watch. Then compare that to like the kiss between Rey and Kylo Ren in Rise of Skywalker, and it's the most horrible, forced, robotic thing you could ever see on screen.
It was
Like,
like
if you could-
killed him.
As someone
I
who
can't
like,
believe-
fucking deeply studied The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, I had no idea that was coming. I was like, what? Why are they kissing? What?
Because
It's like
he was throwing everything at the wall, whatever.
I didn't think it was possible for two like young and relatively attractive straight people to have absolutely no chemistry with each other in a moment like that. But apparently it is.
I mean, she killed him with that kiss. So
Yeah.
Judas.
But it's a real point you make there though, that I don't know, you used to get sexual chemistry in movies. It used to be allowed. You know, it used to be an acknowledgement of like, yeah, you can find each other attractive, and that can be a component of the story, and the audience can get bought into it. And it's like it's just been bleached out of every mainstream film now.
What about True Lies? Arnold Schwarzenegger again, Cameron with that Jamie Lee Curtis scene.
That dance scene,
come
man.
on. I mean, have we seen anything like that today in the last 5 years, 10 years? I mean, I can't think of anyone.
But it's slightly weird. The reversal in nudity and in sex is sort of... It used to be the case when you went through and you had a movie that had sex in it, and it would be the political right, it would be conservative saying, this is morally debased and it's dangerous, and think of the children. And that's sort of flipped now in that the Conservatives don't have a great voice to complain about these kind of things, but the same arguments are being made, but they're being trotted out by female actors who say, I'm not going to do a sex scene unless it's directed by a woman because the male gaze. Women are more than just their bodies. It's corrupting if you just show people harmful beauty standards by having women strip off. It's corrupting the youthful mind again. It's the other side now making that point. You've gone from the period of Jermaine Greer getting her tits out because that's progressive to the modern feminist sort of derivatives of Jermaine Greer saying don't get your tits out because that's progressive. And the Conservatives don't really have a gun in this fight anymore, ironically, given that American Conservatives are always armed.
They don't, but you're right about that. But the thing is that's why I brought up True Lies, because there was no nudity in it, but there was sexuality. It's like sexuality is missing. Everything is.
Well, you know, looking at it from that modern feminist perspective, you can make the argument that this is empowering for like older women, because Jamie Lee Curtis was like mid-40s or something when she did that scene, and it's like the whole point was that she was this sort of dowdy middle-aged housewife, and yeah, like she's able to find that inner, like, I don't know, her own sexuality. And, she's never that far away from it.
That's the thing. When you have the side of like it's freeing to do nudity and it's empowering versus the people who are like, don't do it. Just remember, there's a bit of a like let them fight moment, maybe a pillow fight. I don't know, like just to really get
a bikini fight, I think.
Yeah, mud wrestle.
Oil wrestling.
Figure it out, girls. All right.
But well, you know, compare that, I guess, to like if we take something like the MCU as our example, since it's covered so much. Like, I guarantee you, pretty much every guy in the MCU gets his shirt off at some point.
Yeah.
Everyone from Robert Downey Jr. to Chris Evans to Chris Hemsworth to even fucking Paul Rudd. Somehow he got scarily ripped for Ant-Man. It's like they all went to the gym, got in really good shape, and they show it off because it gets interest.
It's
I
a
guess.
joke in Love and Thunder with Thor just getting butt naked, and they're like, "Oh,
yeah." But
Chris
like,
Pratt-
when
Chris
did it
Pratt
suddenly
did it.
become
Hey,
acceptable?
oh.
Why is it okay for them to do all of that? But it's like if you gave even the barest suggestion of tit on screen, like, oh, that's it. It's the end of the world. It's like, why is that fair?
I mean, who would have ever thought that Chris Pratt from Parks and Recreation would be sitting there in Guardians of the Galaxy? with his shirt off, but he got all buff the same way. You're exactly right.
I mean, like, damn, if I'd gone from a fat fucking blob to that, I would want to show it off. It's like I killed myself in the gym for like 2 years to get in shape for this.
Please give me a nude scene, please.
I just want some sexuality back. They won't. They're not giving us nude scenes, but just something that suggests again we get right back to the basics. Story that engages and brings you in, even if it's to titillate. You know, whether you require some of that, you just don't have it anymore. Well, I mean, literally, what was the last movie that you could think that actually titillated you? Because Drinker just said it a second ago. I mean, that Kylo Ren and Rey scene with the kissing, that's the furthest thing.
I mean, if you go outside of Hollywood and outside of the West, you can still find it. There's a film, what's it called? Is it not The Handmaid's Tale? Handmaiden, I think it is. I think that was on Netflix recently. There's a Korean film, which is, it actually does have a story, and the story is quite good, but it is also a lot of like lesbianism times 1,000, and it's very overt, and it doesn't censor anything. And yeah, for certain people that would be quite a titillating experience, but you have to go outside of Hollywood in particular, the West generally, I think, to find that now. I mean, if you play any like JRPG game, you're going to find tits more often than you're going to find tits in any Western produced AAA game, because there's not the same cultural aversion to that. I think it is a uniquely Western sense of Puritanism that sort of just reasserted itself that hasn't impacted other markets as yet.
I thought you were going to say you see tits more often than faces.
That is also true, yeah.
That's no bad thing, though. I love how like whatever we start talking about, the conversation just always gets derailed into boobs. It's like, wow. What can we do?
But maybe that way Feige can keep it going. All he has to do is phase 6, the boobs.
The boobs.
That's how they'll know they're in trouble. They'll be like, all right, we got boobs. Boobs, look, guys, come on.
Well, I think there's that.
Desperation again, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, you'll know if they've gone downhill, because there was always that meme of like Scarlet Witch, like her early outfit was very like cleavage heavy, and then you get her in the later appearances, and it's just like everything's covered up, like right the way up to the top of her fucking neck. So if she ever like starts showing that again, it's like the character's waning in popularity. Clearly,
I think Scarlett Johansson actually did an interview on this exact topic, and she was asked, how I think it was actually framed as, how do you justify being as sexy as you were in Iron Man 1?
Justify your sexiness, young lady.
Stop being so hot, goddammit!
She had to justify it, and she had to say, well, obviously, I think standards have changed, but back then maybe I did things that I shouldn't have done, and maybe that now I wouldn't do that again today, because now that I've been educated and I see that that's wrong and exploitative. It is boo. Boo.
You know what I hear from that little platoon? They won't give me the paychecks anymore to show them.
Oh, well. But that was something I was going to say about particularly Scarlett Johansson. All the stuff about the male gaze when they were making Black Widow. The thing I noticed when watching it, I was like, there's a lot of ass shots in this movie.
Yeah.
Male gaze. Like, as if women can't find things hot as well. Like, come on.
Well, like, refer to my previous point about every dude in the MCU getting his shirt off. It's like,
yeah,
it happens, but it only seems to go one way now for some bizarre reason.
I guess someone mentioned the film Under the Skin in chat. Yeah, that's a pretty good movie. Everyone should check that out.
I was so disappointed when she got naked in that. I was just like, that's not what I was hoping for.
Is that the one where she's an alien?
Yeah, the alien that turns people into flesh, whatever.
I haven't seen it, but I heard that's the one she was nude in after all these years.
But it's like, when you finally see it, you're like, I wish I hadn't.
No,
like, my illusion,
really?
my mental image was different from what I saw.
Wow.
I don't know.
Don't worry, Drinker. We'll make an AI soon that'll craft you the perfect lady. She'll be called
you.
Tatiana.
No, but I've always imagined. Oh, wow. Now that you're saying that, I always imagine, because I said I haven't seen it. I always imagine, when you finally saw it, it would be like this perfect,
No.
what you imagine. Wow. Okay.
It's just, well, I don't know. She had a kid and stuff, and I guess that takes its toll, but whatever. I know that when they filmed parts of that movie, like, it was done in Glasgow, and like some of it was done in that weird way where it's like they had her just interacting with normal people, and talking to them, and like they didn't know who she was or what was going on, and they didn't know they were being filmed, and because they wanted to get genuine reactions, and it's like, how dumb are you? It's like you must still recognize that you're talking to Scarlett Johansson.
They don't have televisions there. What do you?
That's true. Yeah.
I want to
We
see
don't-
the Scarlett Johansson from Lost in Translation.
Yeah. Well, that was God. That was a long time ago. That. Yeah. Times have changed, but yeah, she would just. It's not loud anymore. I'm afraid.
Remember when she sued Marvel? That was a thing.
Oh God,
that
yeah,
happened.
right after Black Widow.
Is that because they simultaneously released it on streaming and she got fuck all money for it?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
I don't know. To me, that was just like trouble in paradise. It's clear at this point. Like this, everything's fucked behind the scenes, and they're just like holding everything up with matchsticks. Like, no, it's great. Everything's great. Everyone loves working for us. Shut up.
It was that.
Shut up
I mean,
forever.
it was that weird period where like the cinemas were shut down and like movies like that they couldn't hold any longer were getting released onto streaming, and of course they were making nothing for anyone. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can get how you, if your contract is tied into back end profits. You know, this was probably written up at a time when Marvel movies were making over $1 billion each.
Right.
You know, easily. She thought she was going to be quids in. Suddenly, she's getting nothing for it. I can see why it's annoying, but it's like, what are you supposed to do? You can't help that there's a global pandemic at the time.
But I never understood why they released that at the tail end of the Phase 3 and why they didn't include that. Or is that Phase 4? Is that the first movie in Phase 4? I always forget.
Black Widow.
Yeah, Black Widow.
Far
Phase
From
4,
Home was the end of Phase 3, so yeah, it would have been Phase 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why didn't they release that during Phase 1 through 3? Like, it came at the weirdest time. It's like,
The
we
genuine
already killed
answer
the
is that they
character.
didn't believe a woman could lead a film and make money. I'm pretty sure Kevin Feige probably fucking said as much back then,
but
but he
you
would
had
never
Gal
like admit to
Gadot.
it now.
But you had Wonder Woman who came out before that.
It's dude, you're so correct. That it was so stupid. Everybody would have been happy to watch an espionage movie where she was hot in it and action packed, and she worked with Hawkeye, and we got history on how they met, but we simultaneously dealt with some modern new problem. A movie
Right.
just for those two, build them both up.
Yeah.
Call it Black Widow, call it Hawkeye, call it something, whatever. Just that would have been fine in Phase 2. I think it would have even done well.
I do.
No,
Instead
all
of
I remember is that too stupid to recreate a game of tic-tac-toe. That's all I remember from that movie.
Oh my god, how do you fuck tic-tac-toe?
I mean, I would have rather have watched that than that Hawkeye with Kate Bishop, whatever her name was, the actress who played, the Disney film, the Hawkeye series, which actually wasn't a series.
I'm
haven't
quite happy
seen
with
it.
the fact I've never watched it, and I'm fine with that.
There's gonna be a lot more of that as time goes on. You're gonna watch
Oh,
Harkness, Drinker? You're gonna check out Harkness?
Yeah, it was Agatha all along.
Echo? You're gonna check out the fucking spin-off show from the show we didn't watch?
I mean,
Wait a minute.
honestly, like there's so many of these shows I wouldn't have watched anyway if I wasn't here to review them. You know, would any of you have watched She-Hulk if you weren't?
No.
You
Dude,
know,
I
you
wouldn't.
were gonna get.
I wouldn't have watched Rings of Power. I would have watched 1, maybe 2, and then I've been like, nah, I'm done. But
Yeah, pretty much.
like for analysis and for talking about storytelling, like I'm fine with watching them for that reason. But man, I wouldn't be watching the fucking MCU. I'd have been out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I think the older I get, the less patience I've got for stuff like this. It's like I watched a bit of Willow, and then I'm like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm just out. It's not worth it.
I
dude,
did
Blood
watch
Origin.
Hawkeye
Me
when
and Mel
Hawkeye
were
came
dying.
out, and I did
Oh,
not
man.
expect to be sitting here afterwards saying that actually Hawkeye was probably one of the best things in Phase 4. And that's not to say that it's good, that's just to say that the rest of Phase 4 is so abysmal that a show I thought was naff at the time ended up looking better by comparison.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Miss Marvel show, but apparently that's like not as bad as stuff like Multiverse of Madness.
I think it just
Fucking
never
Benetton.
appealed to me. Like it just came across as this like teeny bopper thing that was just
Except my only problem with
irrelevant.
it goes back to that thing. Not only the storyline was bad, but the message that they're sending is if you wish something for bad enough, you too can be a superhero. Like we used to have superheroes who either were born with powers or an accident happened and they came with powers, or something tragic happened, but not like, hey, I want to be a superhero. I want to be a superhero, and well,
Well,
guess
the way
what?
that normally there was like, hey, you can do these small things. That's like kind of like being a superhero. Just do that. You don't have like the big strength or laser eyes or something,
Right.
but you can do these other things. And then the big superhero encouraged the normal citizen or the child or whoever. It's like, hey, you can be good in other ways. You can do these things.
Correct. Spot on. I completely agree. But you know what, MauLer? Someone was suggesting that I've seen your Black Widow, your 4-hour Black Widow breakdown. I'm like, I haven't seen it, but I'm going to see it now.
Well, if you've got 4 hours, like
Hell yeah, I'm going to have to watch it now. I didn't catch that one.
that was so funny because it was like, that's insane. The movie's like 2 hours long, and then I do the Doctor Strange one. They were like 6 hours. How the fuck did you? Well,
no, that sounds
it's
like
like
a
a
lot
whole
of fun.
day, a whole work day for me. It's like I just have something on the side the whole day. That's great.
But I think one of the issues is we've talked about it, then skirted around it. Is I think they need to slow down. Yes, they need to provide content, but could you imagine if they actually did half the stuff, but it was much better?
Yeah.
You're gonna build that impatience for it. It's like, how many years was it between Game of Thrones seasons? Sometimes it would be 2 years. It didn't matter at the time because people were like, I can't wait till the next Game of Thrones come out. You would talk about it, talk about what's coming next. What do you think? And it build up that intensity to it. And now you're like, okay, there's something new every day.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, is it 16 years between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace? And then The Phantom Menace comes out, people are so desperate to see new Star Wars that they actually go and sit through The Phantom Menace. There's a huge, but then you compare like Avatar. I think is it 13 years between Avatar films?
Yeah.
And inexplicably, the second one is still doing incredibly well, but I don't think anyone was champing at the bit to go and see it, which is, it has to reintroduce you to the most basic concepts because it hasn't fixed in anybody's minds. There is a lot of merit in building up the anticipation, as you say. I think, I know I go back to the streaming service economy part there. I just don't think that the rules of the game as they currently exist allow you to do that. They might make more money in the long run, but actually there's a big difference between sort of the one-off blockbuster take from the box office and the consistent revenue on a streaming service that you can then pitch to investors as a stable proposition. So it would be lovely if people actually did, make use of tension and anticipation again. I would like that very much, but I don't think that's going to happen for a while.
Especially because the normal watcher, consumer of these things, they're like, I'm going to go watch this new thing, and then I'm never going to talk about it again. But I had fun for 2 hours.
Well, a lot of the time they're watching it, especially if it's on streaming, they're not really watching it anyway. Like, they'll have their phone on, and like they'll probably be like going off to the kitchen to get a snack or something, like halfway through, and like they're just, it's just stuff that's on in the background a lot of the time. It's just designed to be
screen while they play the little game or whatever.
Yeah, that's all
fine,
it is.
Of course, but that's how they keep making these because they think everyone is going to watch it, but no one's actually talking about it in the long run. It's I keep doing it. If I talk to my friends, my normal friends that don't do the online stuff, and they're like, "Hey, what you thought about that movie?" It's like, it was shite. It's like, "Oh, why?" And then I said like 5 things. They're like, "Yeah, it's actually kind of stupid." It's like, "Yeah."
I guess
they're like, I still like it though. It's like, yeah, then why did you ask me? Why did you bother?
Well, it's like, has anyone ever seen the Netflix show Altered Carbon? The first season.
Yeah.
Okay, you look at a series where the first season, it felt like it was done with care, with passion. Like, we're going to really craft something. And then you go, I was excited till the second season came out. Until I watched the first 10 minutes, I'm like, what is this?
It just, it felt like a radically different show. And I'll be honest, I tuned out after 2 episodes of season 2. It just didn't grip me in the same way. I think, obviously, the cast had all changed. And I know it's the nature of the show that like you can have the same character played by like any actor theoretically. You can just be downloaded into a different body, but it doesn't really help you identify with the characters if they're constantly changing. And I just didn't give a shit about it really.
But it's a shame. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a shame because it's kind of a cool concept, and I think season 1 was really good stuff.
Beautiful. I thought it was a work of art in many ways, especially for a sci-fi quasi fantasy. But it's the same thing. It's like you read the newspapers today, and you have a lot of people complaining about the movies that are being that have Oscar nominations for them, because a lot of people are angry at the fact that Top Gun Maverick got nominated twice. But you're like, have you looked at what you're putting out?
I was going to talk about that actually a little bit. The Oscar nominations that we have this year, because I don't know why they insist on like having like freaking 8 nominations for Best Picture, but some of them good stuff I agree with. Others I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? So they had things like All Quiet on the Western Front, really good. You had Banshees of Inisherin, apparently that's meant to be excellent. The what is it?
Everywhere. What is it called? Everywhere.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah,
got 11
really good.
nominations.
Really cool, inventive movie. Enjoyed that. The Fablemans. It's just like a love letter to Steven Spielberg. So okay. Top Gun Maverick.
Steven Spielberg by Steven Spielberg himself.
I think so. Yeah.
But I haven't seen Inisherin. Is that any good? I've been thinking about spending some time.
I've heard it's really good. Yeah, I haven't seen it
If you like
myself.
McDonald's past stuff, you're probably gonna like that.
Because I like In Bruges with both of them.
I think In Bruges is better, but I fucking adore In Bruges. So
Yeah, I love In Bruges.
You got Elvis, which is just like these biopics. They seem to do quite well for some reason.
I don't think I've seen a single one of those.
You
what
didn't
was it
see
called?
Turn Red? It got a few nominations.
You've got the thing I don't understand is Avatar 2 got nominated. Fucking why? Like on what basis? Because it's big. Tar, which I haven't seen. That's like Kate Blanchett that's in that, isn't she?
That's the one where everybody where it went viral. That's that scene that she, because I haven't watched it yet. The scene that she did where she was talking about the. Okay.
Yeah. The speech with is it the student who says he doesn't want to play a piece by
White
a
masters
white composer, and then she goes on. It's a very good speech. I haven't seen the film though.
You got women talking, so it sounds like a blast.
I haven't even heard about that.
Yeah, and Triangle of Sadness, which I know nothing about, I'm afraid.
That's what I feel like when I watch movies these days.
The director of Hill was having a hissy fit all over media the last 24 hours. The one who made the film about the death of Emmett Till, because she's like, my movie wasn't nominated. You can see this is obviously racism. And I'm like, have you ever considered it might not be good? Like,
yeah. I think it's like the standard Hollywood ploy to like get ahead. It's just like, well, I didn't get the thing I wanted. It's racism. Clearly.
It must be especially disappointing because there is a whole genre of film that is just made for Oscars, and that's why all the biopics get mentioned. Anything dealing with race is supposed to be a shoe-in for Oscar nominations. If it's very deep and dark and serious, and no one in their right mind would actually go and watch it to enjoy it, but it's got a very sincere message. It's very important. These are Oscars films, so you can see why someone who's made an Oscars film would be incredibly disappointed to have been overlooked by the one audience he's actually interested in tapping.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting
make a good film instead, but
I mean, that's a novel concept these days, but I mean, it is interesting that they put in a few of these big mainstream movies into the lists. Like, I guess they're just there to pad it out and make it seem somewhat relevant because. Fuck me, if Top Gun Maverick wins Best Picture, like there's, I'll be shocked for the rest of my days. They'll never give it that.
They'll never give it to Cruise. What was the last time he was nominated? Was it Magnolia?
Oh, good question.
I think it was Magnolia, because he's been chasing that Oscar for years. And when you really think about it, I think he's actually one of the last true Hollywood stars. I mean, you see what he does every once in a while he's filming Mission Impossible. He puts out those little videos and he's like, I just want to thank you while he's jumping, while he's, gliding through the air or parachuting. He's like, just want to thank you. We're on the set of Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people do that? He's like, I'm here to entertain you.
Well, I think, it's good stuff, and I think people keep coming back to the video that he put out before Top Gun Maverick. It would just like a little PA announcement from him in movie theaters, and it's just like, I just want to say thank you for coming to see my movie. Like we're finally out of lockdowns and stuff, and it's great to have you back in cinemas. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the support. Yeah. And it's it's a simple thing, and it's probably took them like 5 minutes to make, but it's just a nice gesture, I suppose, that people appreciate. Just showing a little bit of thanks, a little bit of humility goes quite a long way, I guess.
It does. Instead of them saying, hey, if you don't see my movie, you're a phobe.
Yeah. Interesting as well, the actors in a leading role. You've got Elvis, like Austin Butler, Colin Farrell for Banshees of Inisherin. You've got Brendan Fraser for The Whale. And it would be nice if he won because the man deserves a bit of a break.
That movie only comes out in like April for me in Germany.
Well, I want to see it.
Yeah, I want to see it too.
What is that about? What is that one about Whale?
obese man trying to rekindle his relationship with his daughter, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
You can't say obese now, apparently, based on what I saw on Twitter.
No,
It's,
I wanted to say a Slayer drinker. I'm
Oh my god.
edgy now.
But it's like, how can you not say it? It's a literal medical term for someone who's like a certain BMI. Like, it's what it is.
Right.
Like, what word would they prefer? Plus size.
Chongus. That's what we should.
Chongus?
Chungus.
Wow.
Portly. I think that's a word we need to bring back more. Portly.
Portly, yeah.
Or heavy. I guess heavy.
Well, it's an identity. You've actually the AP style guide updated itself today or yesterday, when it's recommending these incredibly archaic and arcane little tweaks to the way you refer to. So, for example, they don't think you should refer to, taking one example, the mentally ill, because that apparently is disparaging. They're people with mental illness, which is exactly the same thing, but apparently is less offensive for some reason. Same thing with obese. It's not obese. It's people with, I don't know, fat issues. I'm not sure exactly.
People with large.
But so for retarded people, how are you supposed to say retarded? Just
That's people with retardation, I think.
People with retardation issues.
I see.
Gotcha.
I'm learning
People
so
of
much
Todd.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call obese
No, that's
people.
fat people again.
Well, I'm going to call them gravitationally challenged.
But I think that's part of our problem is that we've created such words where they actually don't address the issues that everybody's going with. It's okay. It's like I've my whole life I've gone to fat to skinny, fat to skinny. So I go up and down depending what I'm doing. Like, because I write, and so anytime I'm writing, I gain a lot of weight. And then I'm done writing, and so I get back into the gym. I start working out. I feel good. I'm like, cool. I can't stand that I was that way. But I never said, hey, you are weight challenged. I'm like, no, you're a fat fuck. Get your ass in the gym and work out.
That's offensive.
I think, obviously the difference in your case is like you recognize it's not good to be of that size, and it's like, okay, I need to get to the gym and lose a bit of weight. And it's like, you don't sort of sit there pretending like, no, I weigh like 400 pounds and I sweat when I eat and stuff, but that's totally fine. That's normal. It's like,
I'm healthy, I swear. It's like,
yeah.
No, of course it's not good. I mean, it's like you see the models that they put. It's like, what was it last year? They put that model on Sports Illustrated. They're like, we want to produce this, body positive image. I'm like, this is supposed to be for dudes. It's like, yeah.
See, I heard, and I could be wrong on this one, but as I understand it, that whole movement, body positivity, it was created for like burn victims or amputees, like people who had their appearance radically changed by like accidents and things outside their control. And then it kind of got hijacked by like obese people who were like, oh, body positivity, that's for us. And like they're the ones who now control that whole sphere. And it's like, it wasn't made for you. It was made for people who can't like control how they look, not just people who like eating.
Wow, Drinker, the sphere. They control the sphere now. Oh,
oh no, what have I done?
I'm gonna say they took a large bite out of this whole movement.
I know it's a difficult truth to swallow, but sometimes you have to get used to it.
Yeah, they have no difficulty swallowing.
It's that Ricky Gervais like sketch that you did, where it's like, it's not a disease. You just like eating,
Like eating.
Well, yeah, he's like,
bad.
I understand. It's great. You just gotta, sometimes you gotta calm the fuck down.
But the
Just
problem
don't
is
have
it's
that
not so
third
bad.
pizza once in a while.
Don't have the third pizza.
Calm
There
down.
you go. But it's just bad for everybody. I mean, look, if being fat was healthy, shit, I would be sitting here with like Marlon Brando with buckets of like gallons of ice cream. But it's just not healthy for you. And then you tell kids that it's okay, and it's like you make it worse. That's why I say it comes back to that whole aesthetic. Hollywood's pushing things that are no longer aesthetically pleasing in many ways, whether it's the story that draws you in, something that you want to engage with, or it's the actors. Well, now you got this movement. You're like, no.
The problem is that if you do that, you're setting up standards that people actually have to work quite hard at if they're going to achieve them. And we do sort of live in an age where people are very much averse to the idea that things are within their control, fundamentally. That's where the whole body positivity movement has such utility for people who are just fat but don't need to be. It's an externalized source for their condition. it's not actually their fault. There's no personal responsibility at stake. That's just the way they are. And anyone who tells them that they could just work harder and be better is being fat phobic. But you see the same thing with, as you say, in Hollywood with actors. If you put forward these icons of traditional beauty, that's pressure on people because, oh my God, we actually have to conform to something. We actually have to work hard to look like Chris Pratt. You do have to spend 2 years in the gym to do that.
Right.
Why should we have to do that? It is. I think it's more of a. I think it is more of a women's issue than it is a men's issue. And going back to what we were saying earlier about many male actors don't have a problem getting their kid off, but women particularly do. If you look at campaigns in London to change advertising standards on the tube to get rid of women in bikinis, it is always women in bikinis.
I heard about that.
Because Beachbody Ready is male beauty standards, and that's harmful to women's mental health because they don't want to have to work hard to look conventionally beautiful. It's a movement against personal responsibility, which I don't think is very healthy. Well, it's objectively not in the case of body positivity, but
it's making us lazy. But
Yeah.
it's making people
it's not lazy.
lazy.
It's
It's
just
kind of
no
a
conviction.
movement. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a movement against aspiration as well, and
There you go.
self-discipline. Because no one's saying like you need to look like freaking Thor,
Right.
or something like that, and like you should be like insanely ripped. But like there's a sort of baseline of like, if you sweat when you're walking up a flight of steps or something, you're out of breath. It's like you should probably get in better shape.
Yeah.
That's just for your own like survival. You will live longer and you'll be happier if you're like that. And like you can also suggest to people like, hey, if you do want to take that to the next level and actually get really fit, it's going to take work. It's going to take hard work
lot of
and
work,
self-discipline. And like there's this trend away from that where it's like, oh, well, I don't want to have to do anything that's difficult. I don't want to have to exercise self-control because that's hard.
Well,
I just want everything to
accept
be
that you're
easy.
a fat piece of shit.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what I realized last year. It's like, oh, I'm a fat piece of shit. I'm gonna need to lose some weight, and then I did.
you can, I mean, you can either accept it or you can fix it. But I guess what you shouldn't be doing is pretending that it's okay and just sitting in that middle ground where it's like, I'm going to pretend that everyone should just be like this, and nobody should have to do anything challenging or difficult because that's not really how you should approach life.
No. Well, imagine it. You write books. Imagine if you go, I don't have to actually work at this. I'm just gonna like write whatever comes to my mind.
I'll just like smack my head against the keyboard for like half an hour.
And you turn and you go, there it is. What's wrong? That's perfect.
It works for J.J. Abrams. It will work for you as well.
No. It's like things in life require. Like I remember looking at this interview with I just forgot her name, Morfydd Clark, who played Galadriel in Rings of Power.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe the fact that she was like, do you know that every fight scene we had, I'm like, you mean the one? Okay. She's like, every fight scene that we had, she goes, I had to take a 30-second break, meaning she only did it for 30 seconds, the stunt scene, because then she had to talk to a therapist because it was triggering her trauma that the people who were playing orcs were charging her. I'm like, are you high? Like, really? Are you actually saying this? And she was comparing it to real trauma. She's like, I was suffering real trauma, and I kid you not, like soldiers on the battlefield who are charged. I'm like, you're on a set.
I would love to put her in a room with like a D-Day veteran or something, like or someone who fought in like Vietnam or Iraq or something. It's like, so I was someone ran at me with a latex orc's head on and a plastic sword, and I was terrified. It was like being in a real war.
Right.
And the other guy's just going to be like, okay, sure.
I'd like to find someone who's, if any more survivors from World War One. Let me tell you about trench warfare.
Yeah.
Well, then a generation onward, and it's like there was a tennis ball that they waved in front of me, and I just
God.
I got triggered. I got hit by a tennis ball when I was a kid once.
I imagine that ugly face in front of me, and it's like, oh, it's traumatic. 30 seconds.
It's like I remember Dustin Hoffman. He often talks about this, and so does Meryl Streep. He's like, when he was filming Kramer versus Kramer, he went to the cinematographer. I think I mentioned this before. I'm not sure. He went to the cinematographer and he says, whatever you do, you tell crew one to keep filming. So in the restaurant scene, he grabs his glass, and it wasn't in the script. He throws it and smashes it against the wall. and shoves her or hits her, and didn't tell Meryl Streep he was going to do this. And she freaked out, but he had told him just film her natural reactions. I'm like, could you imagine trying anything like that today? He wanted to get, he's like, because he was a method actor, he wanted to get exactly what was going through her mind. He wanted to pull that out of her to create the best piece of art that moment. Today they're going to be like, oh, therapist, come on, help me.
Well, for a start, if he threw a glass against the wall of the set, he'd break the volume projector screen. Like, that's all around everything. So like that would be out of action for a start. And yeah, he'd probably be sent off the set for counseling and sensitivity training.
But you get the two very famous ones. There's the scene in Alien where Ridley Scott didn't tell anyone that the chest burster was going to burst out of the chest and spray them all with blood, so you get the natural reaction there. But the most grueling one is Stanley Kubrick and The Shining forcing what's her name to do the scene. It's like
Shelley Duvall
until she was actually going slightly mad.
I think her hair started falling out because she was getting so stressed.
Oh no!
You don't get that anymore. The problem with pampered actors is that pampered actors don't give good performances. You need that sort of believability occasionally, and if you are in an incredibly privileged position to earn millions of dollars from performing on screen, playing pretend people, maybe you should actually accept that, you're going to have to go above and beyond because you're so lucky in every other area of your life. You should be put through some difficulty sometimes if that's the best thing for your art. That's what you do. It's what you're there for. It's what you're paid for. But no, now it would be, you have the Alien scene, and as you say, everyone would go away for counselling after that, because how dare Ridley Scott even do it? But Ridley Scott wouldn't do it because he would know that they would all have to go away from counselling. So then you wouldn't get that scene anymore.
I mean, you get elements of that in some productions these days. Like, was it not notoriously difficult for Leonardo DiCaprio when he was making The Revenant? Mm-hmm. You know, he put himself intentionally through a lot of the hardships of the character. And you could perhaps argue that, God, it was just him desperately chasing that Oscar and just doing everything in his power to, like, make it more authentic for himself. But yeah, like, there's still people, I guess, out there who are dedicated to their craft in that way. It's just, you're seeing it less and less in these mainstream blockbuster movies, because it's too difficult.
Work.
now.
Too much work. You said it a few minutes ago. They don't want to work for anything. That requires commitment.
I've got a bunch of super chats here that have come in while we've been chatting away here. As fun as that has been, I don't know if you've got a little bit of time. We could go through them, try and get some answers.
Yes.
As the people demand answers from us.
Oh my god!
But
So
the open bar must answer to the chat. So yeah, the first one here was the opening of episode 2 was very, very good. And, well, I guess it was pretty good.
Yep.
Episode 2 of Last of Us. Quite like that bit.
Yeah.
MauLer and I were puzzling it out the other day and we were talking about it. Was it Indonesia that it was meant to be?
Why am I forgetting it? It's they label it. It's a name escaping my brain. Hang on, I can find.
I thought it was Jakarta or something.
I think it is, yeah.
But,
Let's see.
We must know.
Are you talking about the second episode?
It is Jakarta, Indonesia. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Damn it, you were a couple of seconds faster. Bastard.
But it was well done. Fatigue of comic book movies has been talked about for years. It has to take bad movies in droves for fatigue to really kick in, which it will, but it'll take time. I think, MauLer, you've said much the same thing, where it's like fatigue of bad movies rather than fatigue of superhero movies.
If we had movies as beloved as like The Dark Knight and Logan and Winter Soldier coming out regularly, then we'd be fine. But these films are not loved anymore. They're just tolerated.
Drinker, how excited are you for Cobra Kai having its 6th and final season this year? I, for one, am glad that the show is ending on its own terms and at the same time thanking its fans for supporting this hash brown legendary show. I'm glad that it got renewed for a 6th season, and I'm glad they're going to be able to round it out properly and finish up the way they wanted to, because, I don't know, man, it was looking kind of iffy there whether they would get a season 6. I know that, like, the financing and the economies of streaming shows are kind of different from like network TV, because you don't advertise on them or anything, and it's like you don't generate revenue in the same way. It's just like number of subscribers who sign up for that. So it's a little bit nebulous. And they're only going to get more expensive to make over time. So yeah, it was a bit questionable, but yeah, I'm glad it's happening. RRTNZ says, take care of your balls and they'll take care of you, especially if you do a review of Dodgeball. Chuck Norris will give it a thumbs up. Cheers.
We watched it recently, mutually, right?
We did.
That
When you
was
came over. It's good shit.
It's really good movie.
it's really nice too because I haven't seen it in a while, and it's like it's still great. It's still pretty great.
I'm a little bit scared by how long ago it was made. I think it was 2005. I'm pretty sure. That is really long ago. Yeah, but it doesn't. But it's a movie that doesn't.
Hurts.
It's not aged really, so it feels like it's newer than it really is.
2004, yeah.
Oh Christ, we're coming up on 20 years. Damn. That makes me sad. J.K. Fozel says, evening gents, I would like to present the panel with a challenge and give a quick Steelman review for awful movies or shows. For example, I'd love to hear MauLer give a crack at a positive review of Game of Thrones Season 8. So, yeah, I think he's saying, like, we pick something that we hate and try and give it a positive spin, I suppose.
Well, I guess I'm going first then with that, and it'd be like the acting is phenomenal. It brings a close to a story that's been going for like 10 years, and so it's a phenomenal job they've managed to pull off there. Special effects are just top notch. It's amazing to see such amazing fantasy creatures come to life, a whole world, and there's a lot of threads they had to pull together, and I think they did a relatively strong job considering how difficult it was going to be. And you know what? Bran did have the best story.
Now you can't just out and out lie, MauLer.
That's what a Steelman is. It's not the true argument. It's a made up one.
Oh, I thought it was meant to be just like putting a positive spin on things, like pick the few positive elements you could find.
If a straw man is take the argument and change it up to make it sound worse, Steelman is like take the argument and change it up to make it sound better, right? In favor of the. Listen, I tried. Okay.
No, that's fair play. I think you did a good job. I don't know, Metal. Do you want to go next?
Oh God.
I guess you have to pick your thing first.
I don't know. Oh, it was bad recently. I mean, it was enough bad. Someone else go. I didn't think.
I've got a really
Someone do
one.
Velma.
I haven't seen Velma. I dodged that bullet.
She-Hulk is no longer the worst comedy to have come out in the last 6 months.
Oh my God.
Nailed it. I could go, I suppose. Okay, Ghostbusters 2016 is a funny and irreverent take on the Ghostbusters franchise that successfully reinvigorates something that had been kind of forgotten about for a long time. It gives excellent special effects, really enjoyable humor, and a bunch of likable characters mixed in with great cameos from the original actors that really paid respect to them and their contributions.
I've got Anakin Skywalker shouting "liar" in my head over and over.
And it's all tied in with a really tasteful color scheme that's not overpowering or excessive. So
Lies.
think George, it might be your turn.
What was it? I was out. I had to go, and I came right back. What was the question?
So we got a Steelman, something that we hate. So pick, like, I don't know, a really bad TV show or movie. Try and put your most positive spin on it.
Willow. Well, Willow Disney Plus series. It's dead, so I now appreciate Willow the movie much better.
A compliment.
Yeah. Menno, did you find something?
I was thinking about Scorn. That's a game. That still counts, right? It's just something we don't like, right?
Yeah, it could be anything.
So Scorn was a very, very well made game at very good FPS mechanics. The storytelling was fabulous and amazing, and I understood everything that was going on. And it has very great replayability. And the part where you have to do a choice and it matters a lot, I like that. That was pretty good.
And it's about family. It's what's so powerful about it.
Family.
Family.
Oh, God. Gone was so shit.
Yum Yum Eat 'em Up says reviews for Dead Space remake are dropping and it's getting high marks. When do you plan to jump into it, MauLer? Can't wait to see your playthrough.
And exactly, I think it releases in Britain at 4 p.m. So I will be streaming it around then.
So we'll probably be streaming at the same time.
I'd imagine so. A lot of people that I'm familiar with are going to be playing this. Like, this is Dead Space is one of the top dogs of our generation on 360. Growing up, that's a and apparently a lot of people have reviewed it already. It's in a state that they feel the additions have only improved and that the graphics are top notch, the atmosphere is maintained. And the corrections have been made here and there. It's just like, oh, that sounds perfect. Please be perfect. And
also, it seems to run on your system. That's pretty good too.
Rip Callisto Protocol, you lost. You lost the fight, buddy.
Next one is Wayland Bicefus, who says, Ziploc bag full of snot or watch Velma? I'll take the snot.
I mean, if I just have to have it, I'll take the snot. Yeah, I'll just put it in the bin.
Bucket of Black Plague or Rings of Power? I mean, it's a question of which one's going to kill you first, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's like Rings of Power is slow, like self-deletion, and Black Plague, you got about 5 days.
Yeah, you can find a doctor.
I may have found the ultimate question here. Gary Busey's brain versus Mindy Kaling's brain.
Oof.
I'd rather be Gary Busey, I think.
We'll take Gary Busey.
He entertains himself.
Yeah. Have you seen that Family Guy skit of him just like looking in the mirror? Like, how am I doing, Gary Busey? And he's got like fucking snakes coming out of his head and stuff.
Oh, man.
John Smith says, have you ever seen War Games, the 1983 movie? It's a mix of family fun and Cold War thriller. Also, are you upset that Avatar 2 made $2 billion? I'm not upset. I'm perplexed, I guess. I don't think any of us really care, like, whether it made like $0 or like $5 billion. It like doesn't really matter. It's just like, is it a good movie?
I prefer get that kind of money than the next fucking Marvel thing.
Yeah,
sure, I guess.
I don't know,
but it's still owned by Disney, though. It's like the same. It goes to the same bank account, you know.
Unfortunately,
I do not think it's a good thing that Avatar has made this much money. I think if this is how low standards have dropped, that you can get away with putting very pretty screensavers in the cinema as the height of cinematic entertainment and call it, as the trailer stuff does, the cinematic event of a generation, and people flock to it and they see it and they leave and they feel nothing, but they vaguely remember that it looked nice. I don't think that's good for storytelling as a whole. I think that's probably quite bad because it suggests that the audience is not demanding anything, and so we're not going to get anything good.
Well, what you don't understand is that film is a visual medium. That's why it's good.
But I don't have to leave my room. I liked War Games, by the way. Matthew Broderick.
Sorry, we totally glossed over the first part.
It was great. It was
just like straight onto the Avatar rage.
Well, because Avatar, it's like what Little Platoon said is right. I mean, why you could just sit there and watch your PC screensavers and put some music to it.
But yeah, War Games, it was pretty good fun. Teaching computers moral lessons through the medium of tic-tac-toe. It's fantastic.
I think they managed to nail tic-tac-toe. Good.
Oh, that's better than other movies I remember.
Yeah. Well, it just the computer comes to the conclusion that just like tic-tac-toe, you can't win a nuclear war because both sides just lose, and so it shuts down itself, which is interesting, I suppose. It's a choice. J.K. Fozo says, just watched your DC production hell video. Do you think the Batman vs. Superman director's cut managed to fill in a lot of gaps? I personally really enjoyed the Batman vs. Superman extended cut. I mean, yes, I guess. Like it makes more sense of the story, but it results in a really bloated movie that's like really badly paced, and it's not really going to redeem the film. I suppose it's an improvement. If it, for what it's worth, the extended cut of Batman vs. Superman is an improvement over the theatrical, but it's still not a good movie. I don't know if anyone else has seen it.
No, I've seen it. It's just the fact that I liked moments in it. I just don't think that whole thing worked because of the fact that they didn't have a relationship established. The whole, I got to kill the alien just because he's an alien and he might kill us one day, just to me didn't have that emotional gravitas to it.
No. Your Mama's Llama says, in my opinion, good CGI plays a bigger role in what makes a good movie for the younger generation. I wish remakes had a history of being better. I don't want my kids to miss out just because a movie looks old. It's an interesting point, I guess. Like, are they younger generations of moviegoers, are they just drawn towards things that look good rather than any substance behind it? I don't know.
Yeah. You need to hope to avoid that whole like, your kids not wanting to watch anything older than like 20 years or something because things look old. You need to get them seeing those movies before they can even say things look old. I saw Star Wars well before I had like an understanding of what modern versus older like filmmaking even looked like necessarily. I just saw it all as movies. Don't let that happen. I had a friend who just refused to play 2D games. They were just like, nah, it's too old. Like, no. Like, what are you doing, you fool?
Waylon Bucephus says, higher body count, Albert Einstein or Genghis Khan? Don't know how to answer that.
I don't think Einstein directly killed anybody or asked for.
Yeah, but give him a gun and he would fuck up Genghis Khan.
That's true. I mean, like, Genghis Khan did massacre like half of Asia in his time.
Yes.
So you're not really gonna.
Yeah, but he only had like a bow and arrow. He didn't have like a tank or anything.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, are we talking directly or just like the armies he commanded? Because then it jumps up quite a bit.
I mean, Einstein helped with nuclear weapons, which I think would have beaten the Mongolians, but
no,
he did quite specifically write to people and tell everyone not to use them. So he's a bit of a pussy in that regard.
Wow.
Yeah. Interesting. Next one is TNTV Reactions says, didn't get picked as a guest. Sorry. Maybe next time. Have you guys seen Wednesday? Thoughts if so? Yeah, I've seen some of it. Thought it was fine.
Was it good?
Like, all of it. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it was pretty okay, I think.
I think the actress was likable. I think the aesthetics were pretty good. It's all right, I guess.
Did it honor the Addams Family? I haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really an Addams Family expert, but it seemed all right from what I can tell.
We kind of just put it on while we were having lunch and stuff in between streams. So I don't know, it was just like, it was nice.
It's weird that I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but on Netflix it'll do that thing where if you boot up a show that's like it's been announced thanks to its viewership, it's getting a season 2. It'll like show that to you. It's like, don't you worry, tune in later. This one's coming back. You're like, okay, all right, all right, okay. That's fine, all right.
Unhinged says, is this the happy hour with a drinker and Naz discussing the greatest movie of all time, Hot Rod? I love you. Well, it's not, unfortunately, but that will happen one day. Don't worry. Man of War says, yes, my personal crusade and I are stalking Brother George today. Fook OGL 1.2, Weasels of the Coast, and Hasbroken. D&D be gone. Open D&D, boycott D&D movie. Apparently. Stevie G said, MauLer, Critical said the words walking simulator in his Ragnarok review. Bar fight. Also, do we have EFAP for the Mummy in our future? Cheers.
Oh, definitely. That'll happen, but pretty sure he said it in reference to how it's not a walking simulator, though. Like, at least there were like parts, I think, that you would have said where you're just walking and talking, right? But
I think that, yeah, when it locks you into a walk so you can't even run or anything, and it's just like you're very obviously going down a linear path just so the game can get through the dialogue it needs to in the right sort of time frame. It's like, okay, you might as well just make this a cutscene if you're not going to let me control anything realistically. But yeah. That was a gripe that only really exists in the early phases of the game. It kind of eases up with all that stuff as it opens out, so it's not a problem later.
Movie game.
Yeah. Waylon Bucephus says, for they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. Some Scottish dude, probably. Serious question, Iron Man 1 or Guardians Volume 1? Iron Man for me.
Yeah.
oof,
Most definitely Iron Man. Yeah.
Man, I need to rewatch Guardians. Actually, both of them. I haven't seen them in a while.
I think for Guardians, it was more just like, wow, you made a good movie out of this really obscure group of characters. Like, well done.
I think gun to my head, I would probably say Iron Man.
I agree. Iron Man 1.
Next one is Master Austin. Hail Drinker, it's my first super chat, so here, have a drink on me. Aw, thank you. Appreciate it, mate. Play the High Note says, hey guys, what was the first time that you really noticed PC culture creep into things that you loved? For me, it was James Bond in Casino Royale, where 007 became a pussy galore culture. Sorry, Culture Casino said episode 3 vastly differs from the game. Interesting.
Okay.
So I guess first part of the question is like, when did we notice PC culture start to really creep into movies, mainstream movies?
Obviously, it was Lord of the Rings. I Am No Man. It's like, oh, what the fuck? What's going on?
Yeah,
Last Jedi. No.
I think that was the
really hits.
biggie for a lot of people. Probably Ghostbusters 2016 was another biggie.
Yeah.
But those generally seem to be the main ones that people cite. I think it was really that period, like that 2016 sort of time, 2016, 2017, that this stuff really started taking hold.
Yeah, it's just like something's going on here, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's when Meg Ryan did that did that movie where she was nude and she announced it to everybody. She goes, "I'm going to be nude in my very first movie." I forgot what it's called, In the Skin or In the Cut or something like that.
I think, well, really, Jennifer Lawrence invented the whole concept of PC culture when she invented the first movie. So, yeah, we should really blame her. Next one is Stybeck B says, Magnus is nearly ready. Where can I send the pictures? So this is, I think he's painting a miniature of Magnus the Red from Warhammer. Just send them to my email address from my channel that you can get quite easily. Antruv Singh says, you can only consume one kind of cuisine for the rest of your life. What will it be? Would it be Chinese, Mexican, Indian, Italian, etc.? So if you had to, I don't know, pick one regional cuisine, what would it be? Forever.
Martian.
Italian.
Solid.
I was going to say Italian, but now you've said Italian. So
I think Chinese for me. I think it's like quite a variation in stuff. So you'd have a lot of variety.
There's a
if
lot.
you ate nothing but Chinese for a year, you'd be radioactive by the end of that year. I'm going to say English because
So I get food and
it's
English isn't a cuisine.
it's like it's the most boring, unobjectionable food you can think of. You're not going to like it, but you're not going to hate it. So sausage and chips for a year, I can do that.
Oh,
forever,
I like sausage and chips and bubble and squeak.
No, that's probably. Kitsunebot says, every minute you're late. Every minute that you're late, Velma wins an award. Well, we were only 2 minutes late, so we're okay. Mr. Lucas says, 2 awards, yeah.
like to formally apologize.
Well, they could be Razzies, so it should be all right.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fair.
Biggest on-screen abomination of 2023. Yeah, that's an award.
Yeah. Taki17 says, I'm ready with a lemon mint shisha and what's this? And a can of Perlenbacher Weiss beer. And since there are still characters left, Metal has a flumple dingus.
Whoa!
That's whoa.
Gonna have to cut that out of the re-upload, dude.
I'm just quoting the guy. I can neither confirm nor deny it.
I think that's a beer you get at Little.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Brewer's Droop.
I just checked.
Mr. Wise Guy says, Little Platoon, your Velma video was absolutely hilarious.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to go back to it because they took down my first one. It got 250,000 views in a day and they yeeted it. So I thought, I'm now going to take vengeance. I will inflict upon myself the next 2 episodes. So I'm not sure who I'm taking vengeance against anymore. But then I did,
Thor's World says, cheers all, really enjoyed the video on Production Hell. Is there anyone from the old DCEU chaos that you would enjoy interviewing? Do you foresee an entire MCU video in the future? How does it affect your approach to your own project? So who would I like to interview from the DCEU? Well, someone twisting my arm, I would talk with Gal Gadot, What can you do? I feel like Ben Affleck would probably be the most interesting one. It's like one alcoholic to another, Do we think the MCU will get similar treatment? No, because that wasn't a failure from start to finish. It's just kind of faltering and falling apart now in its later stages. So it's not quite a production hell. And how does it affect my approach to my own project? Well, I just hope I don't end up like that, I suppose. I'm not really in the realms of like multi-billion-dollar franchises though, so I should be okay. John Doe says, LTP's Velma review got me started on the slow gin. I'm not stopping. Watch animes Zeta, Gundam, and Slayers.
I can second Zeta Gundam, but I don't think I've seen the others.
Slice of Pie says, hey Critical, I was in your last Rogue Elements Kickstarter stream. Did you end up getting the Understand Myself test and email I sent you? Cheers, Abby. I don't think I did actually, no. It doesn't ring a bell. Unless I just haven't gotten that far yet through my emails, I might have missed it so far. But if it is there, I will find it. Rough Drafter says, take a shot with me or take a shot at it. She-Hulk versus Velma. One you have drinks with, and one you have to leave no witnesses, and go. So if we could get rid of one, what would it be?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
We haven't seen all of Velma, so it's hard to gauge how bad it's truly going to become.
I mean, She-Hulk was something special.
The thing about it is, like, you could go for the worst, or you could go for the one that getting rid of it would have the most impact.
She-Hulk. Because you don't want She-Hulk to return in the future MCU.
Yeah.
But then Velma might get season 2. I mean, it's technically it's got one already.
Yeah, I'm so selfish here because I'm just not watching Velma at all right now, so I'm just gonna get rid of She-Hulk so I don't have to watch that ever again.
Yeah,
I think Velma's been this.
Velma is it's a thing in its own domain. You can just ignore it. It's not going to impact anything else. It's worse than She-Hulk, but its capacity for damage is less. So yeah, probably.
But let's talk for a second about all the good that it's done. It's it's become a great unifying force. I feel like whatever side of the political divide you're on, you can pretty much unite in your hatred of Velma. So it's like
That's true.
Bringing people together.
I don't think I've seen anyone say that is good or mediocre at all. Everyone is like, "What the fuck is this?" That's all I've seen from everywhere. It's kind of funny.
That would be an interesting thumbnail, you know? Velma is great. And you pull everybody.
Just watch the hate roll in. Christian Vidal says, have you changed your mind on Aha yet? Nope. I think Last of Us 2 has ruined me on that song forever. Forking Around says, you missed an opportunity to have Robert Barnes on. I mean, well, I can only have so many people, unfortunately. CW says, the showrunner's podcast commentary on The Kiss and Love is perverted as fuck. Timestamp 2745. I think this is talking about episode 2. Yeah, were they not making a point about like love is toxic or something, and that's the whole premise of Last of Us as a show? It was something weird like that, and that's what that kiss with the
love is
fungus.
toxic.
I think that was the point they were trying to make, or at least that was the sentiment they expressed. It doesn't make much sense to me, but yeah, apparently that commentary is really weird. It's like this weird insight into the mindset of what this show is about. So it might make for interesting viewing, I guess. But yeah, they produce like a commentary for every episode, so you can get their thoughts on it. Ashernabog says, Muesli, as mentioned in a previous super chat, I found you through Drinker. EFAP52 was your first invite to Happy Hour. The length of stream, 9 hours and 19 minutes. The date of the stream, 9/19/19. My birthday, 9/19/1993. Based
Oh my god.
Blessed be the dawn. Oh my god, it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Well.
It's cosmic synchronicity right there. Blue Team Epsilon says, hello Drinker and Company, didn't get to finish Platoon's Velma video before this started. We'll get right back to it as soon as we're done. I also like Anakin's Greek tragedy more than Luke's hero's journey. I don't deny the movies have major issues.
All right.
Okay. Vinyl Morpheus says, Platoon, I just finished your latest Velma review. Promise me that you won't watch any more episodes. I'm worried that you're going to shatter your sanity for our entertainment.
It's already gone. It's been gone for a while, so no more damage can be done. It depends. If they come for this one too, then I'm just going to keep coming back to it. If they leave it up, then I will hopefully not come back. Although I have heard that the most recent 2 episodes are somehow even worse again, and I'm perversely fascinated as to how that's happened.
Yeah, it's like some kind of crazy like test of endurance, isn't it? How much can you take? Zachariah Nunez says, "Toss a coin to your drinker." You could write a song about that. Thank you. Mr. Wise Guy says, "MauLer, thank you for introducing me to The Quick and the Dead in your Doctor Strange analysis video. Very entertaining, very Raimi-esque."
It is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a Western made by Sam Raimi. It's everything you'd imagine it to be. I quite enjoy it. I always have.
He really loves his like reverse dolly zoom things, doesn't he, in that movie?
It's got all of his trappings. They're really fun. It's even it's got that car in it at some point. There's a wagon built around it or something. So that's how he got it in there.
Is that the one with DiCaprio and Gene Hackman?
Gene Hackman, Sharon
Yeah, that was
Stone,
a good. I like that.
Lance Henriksen. There's loads of famous people in it.
Does Sharon Stone get her kit off in that? I must know.
She did, didn't she?
She does in. There's 2 versions.
With
they deleted
DiCaprio.
the scene. No, it's with Russell Crowe.
Is it with Russell? I thought it was with DiCaprio.
Well, to be
in
fair,
that.
DiCaprio was like 13 in that movie.
I can't
To be
remember.
fair, I'm pretty sure she sleeps with both of them in the film. Like,
Right.
but yeah, I think it's a deleted scene in one of the versions because I watched it with Fringy not long ago and it wasn't in it, and I was like, I remember it getting it stuff out. It's not in this version. What's going on? So yeah, I don't know if it's like a censored cut or something, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Ashernabog says, also to answer Gary's question from EFAP39, yes, someone out there has seen Alien on acid, and it was memorable. Also, High Metal.
Hello.
Sir Will says, "Good day, drinker and panel. This will be the last open bar I can catch live in a while. I appreciate the discussions of the current state of the industry." Thank you. And, well, that was a mysterious super chat. Why won't you be able to catch them live? What are you doing? Are you going undercover? Tell us.
Do I need to lock my door?
I'm in your ventilation system right now. Psychic Girl says, "Has Mike seen the Punisher Netflix series?" Yeah, we asked him about that, I think. I don't think he was a huge fan. From what I remember, he didn't like Bernthal.
What?
Oh, no, he did, but he didn't like the sort of overall storytelling. He thought it was a bit fragmented.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Grant Matheson says, "Good evening all. New challenge. The drinker fixes Willow, not just the character, but the entire show." Nope, can't be done. Unfixable. Dennis Karen says, "Drinker, if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one type of alcohol to drink for the rest of your life, but it had to be mixed with coconut water, what would it be?" Probably have to be rum, wouldn't it? So it's a natural companion for coconut. So yeah, it's probably gonna have to be rum for me. No, you could try vodka, I suppose. Sam Wallace says, "Just tuned in, deadass. I thought George Giant Slayer was Joel. Cheers, lads."
Okay, dang.
I see it. I see it. Hickover says, "Hail, drinker, MauLer, and panel. Raising a glass to you all in Ayrshire." Oh, thank you.
Howdy.
Angus McKnight says, "Hey, drinker, very much enjoyed the happy hour movie reviews that you do, like Aliens and RoboCop. Have you thought of doing one for Master and Commander?"
Oh.
I mean, I've already done an actual review of it, so I feel like I've kind of covered the movie already.
We say this every time. We're like, just before you hit that request for him, just Google, YouTube.
Yeah.
They have done it already.
YouTube has a search function for a reason. That's all I'm saying.
You know, there was supposed to be a second and third one, but they never went forward with them. I enjoyed the first.
Yeah, I assume it wasn't. Maybe it just didn't make enough money. But yeah,
Master
really good
Commander
movie.
was 2003.
Yeah,
Fuck.
been a long time.
Really was. What's the next one? RRTNZ says, "Drinker, please get Michael back again." Awesome. I'll do my best. Whiskey Eye says, "Cheers, lads, and the great and powerful guests of the panel. Episode 2 of The Last of Us was good. I really like the detail they put into the world around them, from the CGI to the practical effects. Very well done. Have a great weekend, all of you." Thank you. And yeah, I think we probably agree that like it looked good. A lot of care put into it.
Yes.
Kim Bob says, "Hi all, just wondering if any of you played the hidden gem that was The Punisher on PS2, an underrated classic and a good use of the IP."
I feel like I did actually, and I remember liking it, but very distant memories on that one.
Would that, like, if it was PS2, would that be based on like the Thomas Jane movie?
I can't remember what it was based on now. It could have been the comics solely. It could have been yeah. I don't know.
Sam Wallace Art says Cowboys and Train Robbers are the birthplace of superhero comics. Superheroes only became mainstream when the crime and horror genres got censored. Interesting. I thought it was like World War II that kind of triggered it. Like that desire for, like, you know, a real like good versus evil struggle and like superpowered people and all that stuff. I could be wrong. Like, that was my limited understanding of it. Jens says, it's just like the problem with magic in a fictional setting. There has to be clear limits and rules, otherwise it just becomes boring. Same goes for firearms in a contemporary setting. I mean, I guess that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Mario Trujillo says, I'm reminding of C.S. Lewis, who was not an easy hand with his beliefs in his writing, but would still try to write a compelling story. I wish we had that now. Yeah, we all do, I guess. Miguel Diaz says, hey Drinker, I started buying physical copies of old comedy movies that are definitely on the cancel culture hit list. Any recommendations on movies to get? Love The Open Bar, by the way, and MauLer.
Thank you.
Comedy movies that are likely to get cancelled eventually.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, yeah.
Tropic Thunder.
I mean, Dodgeball is probably one of them as well.
Ace Ventura, definitely get those because they're
Austin
gonna go.
Powers.
Animal House.
Airplane, 1 and 2. The Hot Shots movies, like, yeah.
Naked Gun.
Yeah. There's lots, and I think gradually they'll all get chopped up.
Yeah.
Ringo says, what do you all think about manga? That industry is doing pretty well and seems to be thriving. Love the content. Well, yeah, I mean, it's because it's not trying to be like, you know, it's not trying to pander to idiots, you know, who don't appreciate it. It just does its own thing. And I guess it's hoovering up the comic book market over here as well, isn't it? Like, people are just turning to manga because it's fun still.
I think so. There's also the element of like, who is it really appealing to? I don't get this. I don't read a huge amount of manga. I've sort of seen bits and pieces, but I get the impression that it's not written with the international audience in mind. Whereas if you compare it to some modern sort of JRPG games, which are quite clearly written with the Western audience in mind, you tend to find that they go in for the most sort of kitsch and twee parody of the original. The reason manga is successful is because it doesn't try and market itself to Americans. Paradoxically, that makes it very popular with Americans who don't like people pandering to them.
What's the next one? Art of Madness says, Drinker, I was listening to a new Audible series and was surprised to learn that you had a small guest role. How is it you ended up in Dungeon Crawler Carl? Well, I did a bit of voiceover work. I just got approached by it and it seemed like a cool little project to be involved in, and so I said yes, and that's what I did. And that was like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something I recorded that. Damn. But it was fun. Fight the Club says, fantastic to see Mr. Barron on. His Badger was one of the first indie books that I got hooked on, and his Punisher will always be the Punisher for me. Keep on keeping on, sir. Nice. I'm glad you appreciated having him on.
Yeah.
The Tickler says, here's your official Tickler recommendation to watch Your Name. If you watch the English version, be careful because some of the translations get left off and it can ruin big moments. Interesting. Yeah, that's been recommended before. Manzanar says, MCU died when Robert Downey Jr. left. I'm not going to argue with that, to be honest. Jens says, Marvel needs more one-off like Logan or the Joker or the Batman. Yes, I know DC. I don't know, do they? Do they need these like standalone movies that aren't tied into
just
anything?
need good movies, man. Just good ones. That's all.
Yeah. Bloodshot says, Mike, I backed the Private American day one. I can't wait to read it. Nice. Obsidian Mug says, time travel versus multiverse. Which gimmick sucks more?
Oh, interesting. Multiverse.
I mean,
know.
they both accomplish they accomplish the same thing, though, don't they?
Yeah.
They allow you to resurrect characters that are dead. They allow you to undo things.
No, yeah, there's You can do anything basically, so they're both the same.
Some
I
time
think-
travel actually introduces basic multiverse style concepts anyway. If your version of time travel is one that you create a new reality
Yeah.
for everything you changed in the past, you've just created a multiverse. Yeah, they're both pretty awful concepts. They can be really interesting. It's just that they never seem to be used very well because, again, as we said earlier, they destroy the rules on which most narrative fiction is based, and they just give bad writers an excuse to do whatever they want to do, which is never a good idea. You need constraints.
No consequences. That's the problem.
Yeah. Pete89 says, any plans on reviewing the new Dead Space remake? Well, I think some of the guys on this panel definitely will.
We'll be streaming it.
Doodle's
tempted.
trouble.
See, the Dead Space games kind of passed me by back in the day, and maybe now it's my chance to experience them. So, I might get myself a copy and give it a go. I'll do a couple more because my voice is starting to die. Stefan W says, why the hell wasn't The Northman nominated for an Oscar? It's such a good movie. Finally, some deep content and good dialogue. Yeah, it was a good film, and shame it missed out, I guess. Zis says, Drinker and Longman, hello, have you perchance seen The Menu yet? Ralph Fiennes, Anya Taylor-Joy, and more star in a movie that gets better than I expected.
I have seen it actually. I watched it recently. It's a horror comedy, very much satirical. I think it's kind of using the common public perception that food at the highest class is insane and nonsense. Like they'll put, a rock on a plate with a flower, and you're supposed to stare at it for 7 seconds before eating anything, or something, just stuff like that. And you're just like, the film sort of starts out with that, and I won't spoil anything. But let's just say, as the film progresses, it gets more and more absurd on a realistic level, and then it sort of switches over to it's absurd, well beyond something that you'd be able to take seriously. And many people start getting scared, try to escape, and there are characters that represent, I think, consumers of art in different directions. Like when things get really crazy, one of them there is just like, nah, it's all a part of how the food is delivered. This is all a theatrical thing. It's a very interesting experience, but experiencing the food. Someone else is like, no, I'm pretty sure this is real, but I love it. This is how I want to eat food. But then there are some people who are just completely normal. And I think each of the characters is supposed to actually represent the many flawed ways we engage with art, be it movies, food, whatever else. I enjoyed thinking about what all of it meant. I'm not sure about if they nailed the tonal balance. That's going to be down to a lot of people having seen it themselves, but I think I might recommend it. I think so. It's a weird film. It's an interesting film, and I had fun with how much it sort of made fun of foodies, so to speak, but also had subtext that I was interested in. And Ray Fiennes is fucking great in it, which isn't.
I mean, he usually is, to be fair. Pretty solid actor.
And it is star-studded, and it's cool to see everybody doing this shit. And it's just so you don't see a movie like that often. It's nice to see something different, A pretentious movie about pretentiousness, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh well.
The Waffle Pan says the new villain for the MCU should have been the many-angled ones and the Magus. Imagine an entire universe full of eldritch abominations and evil versions of our favorite heroes. That'd be kind of cool, actually. And the Gourd King says, no booze allowed at work, so I raise a glass of melted rocks on the rocks to you all. Cheers, gents. Thank you very much. I can't believe your work doesn't allow booze. What kind of place is it?
Bullshit.
Disgusting.
Quit now.
I think probably that's enough super chats for now because I'm starting to lose my voice. So I might have to finish up. That's why I had to we did a super chat catch up yesterday. I think I had to get MauLer to read half of them out because I just couldn't do it.
It was a pleasure.
It was. It took about 3 times longer than normal, but that's okay.
Don't know what you mean.
But I just want to say thanks from my awesome panel of guests for coming on today. It's been great to have all of you on. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the people in chat and all the awesome super chats that you guys have sent. And especially my mods for doing the amazing job that they always do. Thank you, guys. And I guess we'll catch you at the next open bar next week. The links to everyone's channels who's been on tonight, they're all down in the description. So please give everyone a follow, a subscription if you're not already subscribed to them, because they're all doing awesome work. But for now, I guess that is all that we've got today. So we're going to say go away now.
Bye.
Goodbye.